Hello and welcome to the 104th edition of the Tour de France, where in the race's great history for the fourth time, the battle for yellow starts in Germany. Dusseldorf is playing host and known as Little Paris because of its status as the country's fashion capital. It seems like such a fitting place to start the race, with the real Paris being the final destination. For the Germans, they've got so much to cheer for, with 16 riders from this country taking to the start line. Amongst them, one of them is a four-time world champion against the clock, and he'll have the crowd's full support in this opening day of racing, an individual time trial of 14 kilometres. The historical monuments of this great city, which dates back to its fishing past in the 12th century, the economy producer out of the Rhine, it will provide a stunning backdrop, but it's the riders who will play centre stage. And the course itself, it takes some 3,500 kilometres, starting in Dusseldorf, journeying through into Belgium for stage 2 in Liège, into Luxembourg, then into France. Stage 5 is the first mountaintop finish. They then take the first rest day as they head towards the Pyrenees and the journey south into the high mountains. There are 5 mountainous stages throughout this year's race, but just 5 mountaintop finishes. There'll be opportunities for the descenders. It's into the Alps, the Izoard hosting the Queen stage, Marseille for the final individual time trial, then it's Paris, another opportunity for the sprinters. For the team presentation, the locals came out in huge numbers, popular amongst them the reigning world champion Peter Sagan. Last year's second place finisher Romain Bardet. Contador, he won the race some 10 years ago. Quintana's been on the podium. Port is the big challenger, but it is Chris Froome who is the defending champion. The opening stage is 14 kilometres. It runs along the Rhine. The only changes in altitude that you see come courtesy of the 2 bridges that they cross. It is a course for the strong men, and Tony Martin will be amongst the favourites. Hello and welcome to the coverage. I'm Matthew Keenan. Joining me is the man who was the last person to win a stage in Germany in the Tour de France. That was back in 2005. He's a 12-time stage winner, 3-time winner of the green jersey, Robbie McEwen. Welcome to Dusseldorf.
Thank you, Matthew. Great to be here in Dusseldorf, and the anticipation for this race has been building since the very last day of last year's race. And for the English-speaking fans in particular, there is a lot to shout about. Chris Froome, 3-time winner for mine, really the man to beat. But as we've seen over the last month or so, Richie Porte seems to be the man in form and could be the one to end Froome's winning streak here at the Tour de France.
We're just a couple of minutes away from making a start. Unfortunately, the clouds have opened. The weather conditions were ideal a couple of days ago for the team's presentation. Not so today. Birthday boy, Elias Gisbert, at 22 years of age, has got the 1-minute countdown. Nervous moments for the young Frenchman on a wildcard team in his first attempt at the Tour.
You're just absolutely spot on there, Matt. Young rider, just 22 years of age, turned today. Happy birthday. It's going to be a rainy one, but your first Tour de France on a wildcard team, and then being the first rider to roll down the ramp and take on this course. And I'm sure there'll be a few nervous moments when he hits those first bends. Pretty open and straightforward course as he gets 30 seconds countdown to his start. Although the course is open, the turns aren't all that sharp. You will definitely need to be careful in these weather conditions.
The final 15-second countdown. Nervous moments for the young Frenchman.
10.
The youngest rider in the race with a final 10-second countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
At 22 years of age, the Frenchman, Elias Gisbert, gets himself started. It was a little slippery down the ramp. He'll put that behind him and concentrate on the next 14 kilometres.
Well, Matt, we talked about nerves, and we saw that down the very first pedal stroke. The back wheel slipped around. The third pedal stroke, he nearly threw himself right over the handlebars. So that start ramp really, it's not greasy, it's just brand new. And this really fine drizzling rain has just completely soaked it. And I think just that energy that's coming out, really trying to get off to a good start, spun the back wheel, well, that would have given him a nice little adrenaline rush to get himself underway.
As if there wasn't already enough adrenaline in the system. Celebrating his birthday. What a way to celebrate your birthday. The youngest rider in the race by more than 1 year, 22 years of age today. He hails from Brittany in the west of France, so the weather conditions are almost ideal.
Well, I was just talking to Breton a little bit earlier, one of the journalists quite well known among cycling circles, Jeff Kenney, and he said, we might as well be in Brittany because we were standing in the rain. So for a Breton, this is really quite normal riding in this drizzle, although for a Breton, it's maybe not quite windy enough.
Well, there's a young rider that's just got one win to his name as a professional, and that was in the Tour of Brittany earlier on this year. But he's a former junior French national time trial champion, and he was the Brittany cyclocross champion as well. So a little slip on the ramp, it wouldn't have caused him too many problems. And everybody on a day like this, even though the weather conditions aren't ideal, will want to post a pretty good time, at least for themselves. At 48 kilometres per hour, he's moving along okay.
He's moving along very nicely, and we'll see later on. We just see on the other side of the picture there, two riders still warming up on the course, which is really not the done thing once the race is underway, but it's quite a long lap, 14 kilometres. There's no danger of being caught by our first rider out on course, Elliot Gebert from the Fortunato Oscaro team. But you will see later on riders crossing each other on this course because the final straight, 4 kilometres between the last bridge when they come off and the finish line. So they'll be able to see plenty of other riders underway. But I think it'll be tunnel vision by the time they get into that last 4K. It is a very long straight. Matt, we rode it last night on those city bikes back from dinner, and we were commenting on what a long drag it felt like.
Well, as you could see also from what we saw with the course profile, the only rises in altitude as they go away from the Rhine, or at least over the bridges, it's only the bridges that cause any interruption to that potential rhythm rolling the big gear on the flat part of the course. As the 22-year-old continues to move along. One of 4 wildcard teams in the race. A new sponsor coming on board for the Tour de France. Fortunato is one of the teams that we certainly expect to stay in the thick of the action throughout the road stages, getting into the breakaways.
Well, Matt, a little bit earlier I spoke to Ben Swift. I saw him come towards the end of his sighting lap, going around the course, asking how it was. He says, it's all right, but if it gets any wetter than it is now, and it was starting to dry at that point, he said it's going to be very, very sketchy. And we just saw the low speed that Elliot Gebert had to take through that corner. But like we say, slow and upright is better than fast and sideways.
Fast and
I mean horizontal.
Yes. The race, it's based along the River Rhine as we look to our next starter. And about to roll down the ramp is Nacer Bouhanni. A controversial figure, the first rider down the ramp from the Cofidis squad. Nacer Bouhanni, this year, he's already ahead of where he was last year. Last year, he didn't make the start line because at the French National Championships, he got in a fight with somebody that was sharing the same hotel, injured his hand, was unable to hold onto the handlebars, which is crucial for a sprinter. For Bouhanni, the greatest challenge is containing the rage, at least until the last 200 metres on sprint stages.
Yeah, I think Bouhanni definitely, if he's able to contain that rage and really focus it and channel it properly, he's capable of really special things. And he's won 3 stages in the Giro d'Italia, 2 stages in the Vuelta a España. He really needs to get a win in the Tour de France. Second, just a week or so ago at the French National Championships behind former teammate and a little bit his nemesis, Arnaud Démare. But he's on the up. I think he really has been struggling from that knockout crash he had in the Tour de Yorkshire just over a month or so ago.
This is Laurens ten Dam, the experienced Dutchman from the Sunweb squad. A former top 10 finisher in the race overall. He was in 9th position 3 years ago. But for Sunweb, their biggest hopes in this year's Tour de France rest on the shoulders of the Australian from Canberra, Michael Matthews, who will be the last rider to start from that team. He's still a couple of hours away, in fact, almost 3 hours away from starting Michael Matthews at 6:18 local time. And I firmly believe that Michael Matthews will challenge for a top 10, if not a top 5 finish on this stage.
It's certainly a course in these weather conditions that can suit someone, obviously, who can do a good time trial, but is a good bike handler, willing to take those risks. I mean, growing up in Canberra, it's a pretty good chance you've ridden in your fair share or more than your fair share of rain. So Michael Matthews, he's in great form. We've seen that, and he'll be itching to put down a good performance and possibly look at taking a yellow jersey after the first couple of days of this tour.
Time bonuses throughout the first few stages, in fact throughout all the stages with the exception of the time trials. So there is an opportunity later on for Michael Matthews. The Sunweb squad, they're one of the youngest teams in the race, but this is Mr. Experience from that team. They're showing Nasser Bouhanni, but now flick the graphic to Lawrence Tendam. This is a team that comes in with no real pressure because of how successful their season has been already, with the Dutchman Tom Dumoulin winning the Giro d'Italia.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The 13th rider to start the 104th edition of the Tour de France. From Bathurst, it's Mark Renshaw who rolls down the ramp. I don't expect any risk to be taken by Mark Renshaw because his job is the job that he's made his reputation doing, and that is to look after Mark Cavendish once we get out to the sprint stages. Towards the tip of the saddle, it's really starting to hurt. He has buried himself throughout his first 14 kilometres. He crosses the finish line, and there's 3,495 kilometres to go before he reaches Paris.
Well, he's not thinking about those kilometres right now, but I'm sure, although his legs are in excruciating pain after a 14-kilometre effort with just 250 metres to go, I'm sure he's enjoyed every single centimetre of this ride as a birthday boy and a debutant.
And for the moment at least, Gisbert will be able to get a screenshot that said he was in position number 1 at the Tour de France. Our first starter, our first finisher. He'll be blown out the candles tonight at the team hotel as he stops the clock with a time of 17 minutes and 24 seconds.
And the crowd that's braved these weather conditions, they're also happy to see the first rider come in. It's been a long, damp wait for the race to get underway. It certainly hasn't dampened their enthusiasm. Plenty of German fans, but many, many international fans here in Dusseldorf for the tour start. Everywhere you go in town, you're hearing different languages all over the place. So we're about to see a catch, or the catch has been made, in fact.
The catch has happened. This is Nasser Bouhanni in the red colours, and he's been very cautious through all the corners. Lawrence Tendam, though, a rider that has finished in the top 10 in the past, he clearly has ambitions for the overall classification and a high finish in Paris because he's riding full gas. Sonny Colbrelli. Now, this is a rider who's hoping to post a good time, a challenger for the sprint stages, and perhaps just dreaming that there might be a chance to get a stint in the yellow jersey throughout the first week. Colbrelli, a stage winner earlier this year in Paris-Nice, another one of the debutants in the Tour de France. He will set the new best time as he stops the clock in 16:36. That was quick.
Very quick, and in the background behind him we saw another rider about to cross the line, and I would imagine that's a rider who's been caught by Colbrelli, and his Minuteman was Marco Minard from the Wanty Group Gobert Belgian team. So Colbrelli, solid ride, and obviously took those risks we spoke about on this wet course. This is Andrei Grivko from Team Astana.
And Andrei Grivko is the first rider from the Astana team to go down the ramp. And it's worth noting that they've sent Grivko off so early. He's a 5-time national champion of the Ukraine against the clock. And this will be an opportunity for him to ride the course in the wet, which most of the riders didn't get a chance to today because it was relatively dry earlier on this morning. Then head back to the team bus and pass on the information to his 2 team leaders, Fabio Aru, the Italian, and Jakob Fuglsang, the Dane.
450 to go.
He'll be well inside Andrei Grivko. This is a blistering time. He's been quicker over the second part of the course than what he was on the first part. 5-time national time trial champion, setting the leaderboard alight at the Tour de France. In Dusseldorf, he'll be heading to the hot seat on a wet, miserable day. The big favourites, though, they are still to come. And for Grivko, the final few hundred metres are taking an eternity. But he stops the clock with 15 minutes and 43 seconds. He has blown the time of Sonny Colbrelli away.
Oh, 53 seconds by our calculation on the line. So just 12 seconds ahead of Colbrelli at the first intermediate check after 8.1 kilometres. In the final 6 kilometres, he's taken another 41 seconds. And that last 4 kilometres, that's where the real time trials will come to the fore. That's the type of straight that a guy like Tony Martin loves, but also one.
Real cycling intellect. This is De Gent once again. The red colours of Lotto Soudal. Their big focus, Robbie, no doubt, throughout the first week, will be to get another stage victory for one of your old rivals, Andre Greipel, who for the past 11 Grand Tours that he's ridden, he's won a stage as Dylan Groenewegen has gone down, showing just how treacherous this course is. And this is a warning sign for the favourites. Robbie.
Not even a white line as far as we could see, just really, really slippery. That's one of the things Ben Swift told me earlier when I was speaking to him. He said, in some places, the asphalt's really quite good. It's a little bit rough and you've got some grip. He said in a lot of places, it is so smooth, you feel it's going to be very, very slippery. It looks like it just happened to Groenewegen. Maybe a little bit of aquaplaning on that slippery surface. There was hardly a white line to touch.
And it's not as if he could be accused of taking an enormous risk. It looked, to my eye, as if he was approaching that corner with a fair bit of caution. And that news will go back to everybody who is still yet to start, including the likes of Chris Froome, Richie Porte, Nairo Quintana and Alberto Contador. Speaking of bad luck, can Alberto Contador get through this year's Tour de France without a crash? That's not a concern for Simon Clarke, riding for the Cannondale Drapac team. There are 3 American teams in this race, 3 American registered teams anyway, VMC, Trek Segafredo and Cannondale Drapac. The Americans have just 3 riders in the race, all of them with a team in green, the Cannondale Drapac squad, which is also part Australian with Michael Drapac, the man behind the Drapac side of the team.
Sometimes.
Daniele Bonatti. The Italian, formerly known as a sprinter, he's won stages in all 3 Grand Tours, Italy, France and Spain. But that's not his role here. Here, the role for Daniele Bonatti is to protect both Nairo Quintana and Alejandro Valverde on the flat, windy stages.
The bodyguard. He's really changed himself, reinvented himself to go from sprinter and a more classics rider to then looking after general classification favourites. And Quintana always wants to have him in the team, as does Alejandro Valverde, because they know they can rely on him. And there's always those flat, windy days, bunch sprints. He's the man that looks after those riders. As we're looking at Simon Clarke finishing off his 14-kilometre time trial here on the streets of Dusseldorf.
Former junior world champion in the team's pursuit on the track, Simon Clarke, one of the captains on the road for the Cannondale Drapac team. Plenty of Australian flags in the crowd as well. Clarke has made a full gas effort throughout this 14-kilometre individual time trial. He won't be challenging the time of Andre Grivko, who is the quickest. But Clarke stops the clock in a little over 17 minutes. Micah, a top 3 finisher in the Volta of España 2 years ago. Rafael Micah, former winner of the King of the Mountains classification. He took that out last year. He also won it in 2014. He's won multiple mountaintop finishes, bronze medalist at the Olympic Games 1 year ago. He's here as a teammate of Peter Sagan, but he has his own ambitions to finish inside the top 10, perhaps even the top 5.
Rider, debutant about to roll off the ramp. Just before that, Rick Zabel, yes, the son of 6-time green jersey winner Eric, riding for Katusha. But right behind him, the man we saw before warming up to the tune, Eye of the Tiger. It'll be Peter Sagan time. And this is what a lot of this crowd have come out to see.
And Peter Sagan will get more support than the local hero, Rick Zabel. This is Carlos Betancourt once again. Here he is, Peter Sagan, about to make a start. 20 seconds to go. The back-to-back world champion on the road. He will want to post a good time here because there's time bonuses over the next few days, which provide an opportunity for Peter Sagan to get a stint in the yellow jersey.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's a determined Peter Sagan who gets underway. The horsepower causing a little bit of wheel slip. And if anybody can say that the rain creates favourable conditions, it's Peter Sagan. Wet, slippery, dangerous, that's his big advantage.
Can be an advantage, could be his downfall. Don't want to wish it upon him, of course, but Peter Sagan's a man who always takes the risk. He always knows He's got a lot to win in those corners. We saw how slippery it is. And just the way he leans his bike over, he hits a spot like Dylan Groenewegen did. Doesn't matter how much skill you got, you've only got a few millimetres of rubber in contact with the road. Peter Sagan, he'll take the risk because he'll believe in these conditions. He's a big chance.
Roman Kreuziger, a former top 5 finisher. A new addition to the Orica Scott team. They have 2 captains in their ambitions to support Chavez and Yates. Matt Hayman on the flat stages, Roman Kreuziger in the mountains.
Kreuziger, the Czech, he is here as super domestic, Lux domestic for Esteban Chavez and Simon Yates. And should things go awry with the general classification contenders from Orica Scott, Kreuziger is a very handy rider to have in the team to represent in those tough mountain stages. Carlos Betancourt now, the Colombian from Movistar, coming towards the finish.
And we would like to see the clock for Carlos Betancourt to see how he compares to the quickest time of Nikias Arndt. He's been cautious through the corners, but it's been maximum effort on the safer part of the course for Carlos Betancourt. Movistar in their 35th appearance at the Tour de France. Different sponsors throughout that period. A good start for Carlos Betancourt inside the 17-minute mark. It's 16:58. Bike of Team Sky on the flat stages. He's worth 2 or 3 riders at least.
Probably ridden the most in the wind of Team Sky of all the riders of Sky. Kirienka, Mr. Reliable. Always looks a little bit like he's in slow motion. Get a side-on shot, it'll tell you in no uncertain terms he is not in slow motion. Former world time trial champion. I wouldn't put him as a favourite for this time trial, a little bit too short. And I think his best time trialling days are behind him, but he's certainly got what it takes to stand by Chris Froome to win Tours de France.
And Team Sky, they won't want him to take any risks on this course because he needs to be there throughout the next 3 weeks. In fact, quite a few of the French riders on FDJ, they refer to their Vespers that help them out training motor pacing, their motorbikes, as Vasily.
Kirienka in the final kilometre of this 14-kilometre time trial in Dusseldorf. Fastest intermediate time, 15:18, 700 metres to go.
It'll be tight. 16:14 is the time to beat. And Matteo Trentin, well, he's got the score on the board. Kirienka, with the rainbow bands around his sleeve as a former world champion, has got the mouth wide open.
I'm saying 9 or 10 seconds quicker than the previous fastest, but not under 16 minutes. And I think our eventual winner of this stage will be under 16.
Vasily Kirienka setting the leaderboard alight. This is a benchmark for the others to chase, but it's still Matteo Trentin's time of 16:14 that needs to be bettered. The Belarusian charging towards the line in the new white Sky kit, and it's been white hot quick. It is Kirienka stopping the clock with a time of 16 minutes and 11 seconds. 3 quicker than Trentin. It's a new best time.
Et 85 centièmes de mètre à l'actif du champion du monde contre la montre en 2015, le Bélarus, Vasily Kirienka.
Solid time by Kirienka. Of course, I was going off the 16:20 of Nikias Arndt. I've forgotten Trentin's 14. Said 9 or 10 seconds. Well, it was at 16:11. But again, I think it's going to take a time under 16 minutes to win this stage. Judging by what the riders have done so far with the ultra specialists of this discipline to come. Not that Kirienka isn't a specialist. It's a 14-kilometre time trial. Kirienka a bit better over those much longer distances, 40 to 50 kilometres of time trialling. Jack Bauer, another specialist. And as a Kiwi, should be fairly used to wet conditions.
He's been a great recruit for Quick-Step Floors.
Absolutely.
Champion, the Polish national time trial champion, Michał Kwiatkowski.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
Kwiatkowski, world champion a few years ago when Simon Gerrans finished in 2nd position, is a rider who in the past has caused plenty of surprises in individual time trials. In fact, he causes them so regularly, they should no longer be called surprises.
He's caused surprises in a lot of races, but it's just pure talent. He's such a classy rider. 2 years ago, we saw him ride Peter Sagan out of the wheel in Strade Bianchi to win there. We saw him beat Peter Sagan in a sprint in Hardelbeke. We've seen him perform in the high mountains. We've seen him win GC. But in this race, he's here for one thing and one thing only, and that is Chris Froome.
Here's some context on how versatile he is. You just mentioned the fact that he beat Peter Sagan in a sprint finish, so he's quick. When he first rode the Tour de France in 2013, he finished 11th overall. 11th, Robbie.
I first saw Michał Kwiatkowski when he came to the Radio Shack team. I was there in 2011 for one season. He was 19. He looked 16. He rode like he was 30. He rode like a very good 30, very strong 30-year-old. Like, just his experience without having experience. You could tell he was a classy bike rider, and it didn't take long for that to come out because a short time later he was world champion.
Natural instincts. And he's raced against Peter Sagan his whole career, right throughout the junior ranks. There's some fantastic photos of those two sharing podiums when they were 16.
On the road, on mountain bikes, all over the place. Two very classy bike riders with different ambitions in this Tour de France. But their paths will certainly cross somewhere. Jaco Venter coming into left hand, tight, really, really ginger through there.
In his final Tour de France, Thomas Voeckler rolls down the ramp for Direct Energy. Normally in the number listing, he goes as number 9 on the team. This year, they've put him in position number 1. He wears number 171, a former yellow jersey wearer, multiple stage winner, and a 4th place finisher in the Tour de France way back in 2011 when it was Cadel Evans on the podium with the Schleck brothers.
He always manages to do something special in the Tour de France, and I don't mean just having his tongue hanging out. Winning stages and winning in the mountains. We've seen him go on escapades in the Pyrenees, in the Alps, but also sometimes on flat stages where he's managed to pull the wool over the peloton's eyes, stay off the front, and then out sprint a small group of 2 or 3 riders and take the stage. So a very cunning rider, Thomas Voeckler. Love him or hate him, he gets the job done and has for a lot of years, and he'll be enjoying this final lap around France, which of course starts in Dusseldorf. But back to Cavendish and his team, whether they'll chase or not, I think Cavendish and his team will put themselves in that underdog role. Cav is unproven at the moment because he's been sick, so he's going to play that card, try and let teams like Quick-Step and Lotto with Greipel and Kittel do all the work, and if he's still there, you'll see him pop up with Renshaw and try and get himself closer to that 34 stage win record of Eddie Merckx. Cav, of course, sitting on 30 stage wins in the Tour de France.
On the course, following one of his teammates, taking a look at the circuit under race conditions. That is attention to detail, and he is with the Polish national champion, Michał Kwiatkowski.
Well, I wonder how much he's learning, because Kwiatkowski makes it look very easy, and Kwiatkowski is a fantastic bike handler. Can really corner, takes the risks, but looks so smooth and so in control. He might make it look a little bit too easy for Chris Froome.
They've got a good relationship, those two. They do a lot of the training together, and Kwiatkowski has been helping Chris Froome throughout his career since he's been on the team with some of those descending skills. This is Degenkolb now coming through the finish line. He won't challenge the time of Vasil Kirienka, but it's a pretty good start for the former German policeman. Charging towards the line, it's just outside the top 10 for now for Degenkolb, but a few of the big favourites are still to come. It will be inside 17 minutes as Degenkolb stops the clock in 16:53.
Good ride from Degenkolb, but news just in. Michał Kwiatkowski, equal fastest time at the intermediate check. 9 minutes and 20 seconds, the same as Vasil Kirienka. But Kwiatkowski, importantly, the number 1 next to his name, this is Andre Amador.
A super time by the only Costa Rican to have ever ridden the Tour de France. A key teammate, Fernando Quintana and Alejandro Valverde, strong against the clock. This is a good start for Amador, as it is for Movistar. He won't better the time of Vasil Kirienka, but it will bring a smile to his face. 6th position for Amador, 19 seconds off the pace. A good start. And the Olympic champion. This is Robert Gesink. The stage that he won in the Tour of Spain last year was actually into French soil up in the Pyrenees, and it was a beautiful win by Robert Gesink. And this is an outstanding ride by the Dutchman. Super strong against the clock today. The lanky Dutchman, now at 31 years of age, he's been 4th in the Tour de France before. He's aiming for another top 10 finish by the time we reach Paris, and the condition looks good early. This is one of the days where he would have expected to concede sometime, and he will to Chris Froome and Richie Porte, but not a lot. Inside the top 10, 8th position for now, 23 seconds off the pace. Surely he'd be pleased with that.
That's a great ride by Robert Gesink. We had said any climbers, GC riders that go under 17, they'll be pretty satisfied with their ride. That's well under, fantastic ride. This is Daryl Impey, the South African national time trial champion from Orica Scott. And if body language is anything to go by, he's still got the back wheels spinning out on a straight section. I've never known Daryl Impey not to give it absolutely everything, whatever the circumstances, whatever the terrain, whatever the day, even in the off-season.
He's been a 5-time national champion against the clock of South Africa. He struggles in their road national championships because he's outnumbered by dimension data. But no doubt it is a race he would dearly love to win. And I think that if he gets a little bit of freedom, he's a chance to win a stage in this year's Tour de France. As he goes through the intermediate checkpoint at roughly 9:30, 9:31, he's only 11 or 12 seconds off Kerienka at that point. He is really moving.
He is motoring. That's Bernard Eisel he's about to pass. It's making Eisel look like he's just warming up on the course. We have said Eisel, he's got other fish to fry, and there tomorrow with Cavendish into the slipstream, slipping out of it again. Daryl Impey building that little bit of extra speed, taking every little advantage. Perfectly legal, run at him, come off him, straight on past. Impey out for a good time.
This is Zenedic Stibar. He makes the right-hand turn onto Rotterdam Street, and now it's the long 4-kilometre journey through to the finish line. Warm-up from Tony Martin is the sort of warm-up that would wear most people out. Philippe Gilbert about to start.
3, 2, 1, stop.
In 2011, Philippe Gilbert won the opening stage in the Vendée region. It was a road stage. He collected the victory. He collected the yellow jersey. Looked like he had a little bit of a mechanical problem there, Philippe Gilbert.
Yeah, it looks like the chain may have jumped off. He was looking down, then looking back to the car. Looks like he's got things back in order now, but looked like a possible chain jump, maybe just fell off. But Philippe Gilbert, this is not his specialty. This is not where he'll be expecting to win a stage in this Tour de France. He would have liked to put himself close. He's not a bad time trialist. Still took a fairly good risk going into that first turn, that left-hander, very close to the barriers on exit. But he has been saying in the Belgian press in the week leading up to the Tour, I've come here to double my number of wins in the Tour de France, because he has won.
Cavendish will be the next to go. 30 stage victories for Mark Cavendish.
3, 2, 1,
The second most stage victories in the career of anybody at the Tour de France with 30. It's only Eddie Merckx who surpasses him with 34. Today, Mark Cavendish will not make it 31, but tomorrow he might.
He might. Mark Cavendish is on the up. Massive question mark how he'll fare in this Tour de France with so little racing. Came back from that illness, Epstein-Barr virus, as we're going to see something in this corner. Is that Roglic?
Bennett.
Bennett.
It's George Bennett has gone down early. Treacherous conditions. What would your message be to him if you were the sports director now for George Bennett?
Stay calm. See the sport director pushing off and trying to stop. That's how slippery the road is in these conditions. I say to him, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Because you can't try and pull that time back in now. You've just got to stay calm, stay on the bike. Don't fall off a second time. It's extremely slippery out there.
Here comes Castrovejo, the European time trial champion, riding for Movistar. Bronze medalist at the World Championships last year, 4th at the Olympic Games. He won't be toppling the time of Vasil Kirienka. It's still 6:11 that stands as the time to beat. But this has been a good ride by Castrovejo. It will please Movistar. They also like the team's classification. 12 seconds off the pace. 7th best time for Castrovejo.
Good ride by Castrovejo, European time trial champion. And we've just seen the most important thing out there today is staying upright. It can happen at any moment. There's been a couple of left-handers that brought people undone. Dylan Groenewegen, also from Team Lotto NL Jumbo. So 2 riders from the same team are the only 2 that we've seen fall. Could it come down to tyre choice, I wonder?
Kirienka still at the top of the leaderboard, 3 seconds to the better of Matteo Trentin. It's then his teammate, Mika Kwiatkowski, in 3rd position. The young German, Nikias Arndt, in 4th. Grivko is the next best. The South African champion, Daryl Impey, in 6th. Castrovejo in 7th position. Then Peter Sagan, Andre Amador, and it's Robert Gesink, the big Dutchman, who rounds out the top 10. Tony Martin, world champion, warming up and trying to stay cool whilst he's warming up with temperatures in the mid to high teens.
But even in weather like this, you can see these riders, they are sweating profusely. The wattage that they're putting out in these warm-ups, you've got to get the engine right up to red line pretty much in the warm-up. So you're going to sweat so much, but you want to keep your body temp down. So with the ice vest or the bags of ice in stockings, old school style for Tony Martin.
The big Danish hope from the Astana team. This is Jakob Fuglsang. Dual leadership across at this team, along with Fabio Aru.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Recent winner of the Criterium Dauphiné, Jakob Fuglsang, is down the ramp. He's been a former top 10 finisher. The Danish press, they're excited about his chances of repeating that.
Well, Matt, we had lunch with the commentators from the Danish TV, and instead of just having 2 commentators here this year, they have 5.
6.
They're excited.
At the press conference with Fabio Aru, the national champion of Italy, and the designated team leader for Astana, the Danish journalists outnumbered the Italians 5-1. They're super optimistic. And he had a very good hair game at the team's presentation. It was the yellow jersey for the Quaff. It was impressive.
Yep, Jakob Fuglsang, known for his style. His style on the bike is what he's become best known for with that ride in the Dauphiné. To take the yellow jersey off, this man's teammate, Richie Porte, this is Greg Van Avermaet.
The Olympic road champion is down the ramp, and the man who won the silver medal was Jakob Fuglsang, who started just 1 minute in front of him.
Well, I wouldn't expect today for Greg Van Avermaet to catch Jakob Fuglsang. I don't think he could take a minute on him, and I'm not so convinced that Van Avermaet's going to give it absolutely everything and take all the risks. He's got his eyes on other prizes, and he's really going to have to pick his days carefully and get permission from the team if he wants to go for a win, having one of the big favourites in Richie Porte. But this is Mark Cavendish, talking of favourites.
Well, Mark Cavendish, a favourite for the flat stages, aiming for a victory in the sprints. But I want to get back to your point about Greg Van Avermaet. If you were the sports director at BMC, with Richie Porte as one of the big favourites to take the title away from Chris Froome, would you even give Van Avermaet the freedom to hunt for a stage victory?
Yes.
Why?
Because he deserves it, because he's Greg Van Avermaet. I could stop there, but there's also enough guys to look after Richie Porte. Just has to stay in the group, and once they're going to be in a similar position, once it gets into that last kilometre, it's everything to the line. Van Avermaet deserves to get his chance. We're going back to Rodez this year. Greg Van Avermaet beat Peter Sagan there 2 years ago. That's the stage he's focused on. He said he really only wants one chance to go for a stage win, and when Greg Van Avermaet lines something up, he quite often hits the target.
He doesn't miss many, does he? If he misses, he finishes 2nd or 3rd. Still Kirienka at the 2nd place finisher, Romain Bardet.
4, 3, 2.
These are nervous moments for Bardet. This is his Achilles heel. His objective this afternoon is simple: limit the damage.
Exactly. Limit losses were the words on my end of my tongue. Romain Bardet, he will have been told, And he'll get reminded as well, be cautious, hold a good tempo, but don't take any risks. It's just not worth it. One of the big French hopes.
Former stage winner, wearer of the yellow jersey, not a contender for the general classification, but he will be hunting stages, not on the days for the pure sprinters, not up in the high mountains where they'll be racing for the yellow jersey, but all those days in between. Galopin is always a contender. So at the finish line, Vasil Luketienko, he waits to see whether anybody can better his time. We're getting down towards the back end. We're just on 9 minutes away before Richie Porte makes a start. A couple of minutes after that, it will be Alejandro Valverde. Looking forward to seeing Taylor Phinney as he makes his debut in the Tour. This is one of his teammates, Rigoberto Urán. Michael Matthews, he is 20 minutes away from starting. 2 minutes after him will be the stage favourite, Tony Martin. Chris Froome will be the last to start, and it's 35 minutes before Froome, the defending champion, rolls down the ramp.
He's had a crash.
Tony Galopin.
Well, you can see the first little slip, and then it completely let go. He was coming in hot to that corner. You saw just as he was entering the corner, there was a slight little slip. He started to regather, let go of the brakes a little bit. He's carrying too much speed, completely let it go. You see now he's just trying to get his composure back, but that's the end of any sort of decent time for him. Not that he was looking to win the time trial, but it's definitely not the way you want to start your Tour de France.
Can Chris Froome win this individual time trial?
No.
Chris Froome warming up, aiming to win the Tour de France for the 4th time. He's already declared he wants to win it 5 times. Romain Bardet, he cannot win the individual time trial, but he wants to do a solid time. Froome, I'm not so sure he can't. Bold statement, let's see. That's the beauty of it. Nobody knows. The last person to come into the Tour de France without a win and to win the race overall was Carlos Sastre back in 2008. So Froome is trying to defy the numbers, but he's defied plenty of numbers before. Who would have expected a guy born in Kenya, educated in South Africa, who just started riding a mountain bike when he was in his late teens to go on to win the Tour de France 3 times? No one, but Froome has done it. 8 days to go, but then things went pear-shaped.
So how do you think he's feeling now? Alberto's come back in and riding the Tour for GC, absolute leader. After the position he was in last year, like you said, in 2nd place for so long, there's got to be an element of disappointment.
He'll be fine because he had the leadership role at the Giro d'Italia, and Bauke Mollema is a guy with great composure and class. He'll do the job for Alberto and will be Alberto's key lieutenant. But just back to Team Sky, how much of today, with those strong performances, is a message to the likes of Porte, Quintana, and this man, Alejandro Valverde?
There's always a message from Team Sky, and it's usually always the same.
Thumbs up, Alejandro Valverde makes a start, and the message from Team Sky is be afraid.
We're here to dominate.
Valverde. Movistar have continued to tell us that Nairo Quintana is plan A and Valverde is here to support him. I think it's lowercase plan A, uppercase plan B for Alejandro Valverde, but it's all plan A at BMC for Richie Porte.
Alejandro's always ready to step into the breach, but it is all for Quintana. One thing we do know at BMC, there's no other plan except for Richie Porte, and rightly so. He's been the man of the season. Last year, he was the 2nd best rider in the Tour de France. Okay, finished 5th, but he was much better than that out on the road. As we look at Rigoberto Urán making his way into the finish, and he's not going to go underneath that 17-minute barrier we've been talking about. Fades into the 40s, placing-wise, outside 17 now, over that last 100 metres. But Urán can be glad to just get this rainy day out of the way.
Doesn't look like he's enjoyed that at all, Rigoberto Urán. For the Cannondale Drapac team, they'll also be holding out high hopes for Andrew Talansky in the overall standings, plus hunting stage victories. Rigoberto Urán, Pierre Rolland, they're the kind of guys that potentially could win the King of the Mountains jersey. This is the big Dutchman, Jos van Emden, the winner of the final individual time trial a little over a month ago at the conclusion of the Giro d'Italia. He then finished 4th in the national championships.
I thought he was a bit flat. In the Nationals. 15:40, good to where he is at the moment. But, again, our clock's not running, so is this a replay and that's his time? I doubt it.
Let's wait to see the clock at the finish line. Ignore the graphic. 16:04 with Geraint Thomas is the time to beat. Now the clock is heading in the sort of direction we expected. Not good enough for the win for Jos van Emden, but good enough to punch his chest with plenty of pride. A solid performance by the Dutchman. He slots into 4.
I was always so exhausted in the Tour de France. I didn't watch TV, I didn't read books, I didn't listen to very much music either. If I wasn't on the bike, I was quite often just asleep in the fetal position.
Sounds perfectly logical. This is Alexander Kristoff, who you spoke about before. He made a shocking mistake on the stage in Switzerland last year when he miscalculated where the finish line was and he got the throw to the line wrong. He doesn't make many mistakes, but that day he did. If the timing was right, he would have won. But again, ifs, buts and maybes don't count after you go across the finish line.
And he may have got away with it if the rider next to him wasn't Peter Sagan.
Yeah. You get punished for your mistakes when you're riding against the dual world champion Peter Sagan. Alexander Kristoff now charging towards the line, and this is a really good time. Sending a message to the Katusha team, support me for the sprint finishes because I'm here in brilliant condition. The big Viking, he first won a national title as a 19-year-old when he got the better of Tor Hrushov. It took him a little while to mature after that. He's since won some of the biggest races in the world, and he sets a good time today. Just 36 seconds slower than Geraint Thomas, who was in the hot seat with the best time. This is Sylvain Chavanel, starting Tour de France, number 17.
4, 3, 2, 1, stop.
In his 17th Tour de France, Sylvain Chavanel, he's worn the yellow jersey, and he still has another year to run on his contract.
He just can't get enough. He loves it. It's not a job.
Start for Alejandro Valverde. So now, certainly, Nairo Quintana is number 1.
Same spot, same corner.
Same mistake.
Dylan Groenewegen down in the same corner. Tony Galopin in the same corner. And Alejandro Valverde is not getting up. He is not well. He's really hit those barriers hard. This is a disaster for Valverde and the Movistar team.
Well, Unze, the team manager, was there. Jose Vicente Garcia da Costa, the sports director, was there. And Alejandro Valverde was showing no signs of moving. And this will come through to everybody else. Caution.
And look at the speed he's approaching the corner, right in the puddle in the middle. Both wheels let go at once and right into the foot of the barrier. You see just under that flag, the white, blue and yellow, he's hit the foot of the barrier. Richie Porte is still to come. I hope he knows what's happened ahead of him and to take it easy.
He hit the foot of the barrier with his left shin. We'll wait for the reports on the condition of Alejandro Valverde, but I would be surprised if he gets back up and continues.
Sorry, Richie Porte is not still to come. He's ahead of Valverde, so that's already a breathe easy for the Aussie fans.
So Porte through that treacherous corner early. This is the last tricky one. Through here, and he's safe.
It's the last corner. It's 4 kilometres straight ahead to finish on the Rotterdamer Straße here in Dusseldorf. Richie Porte, he's out of danger. Now it's all about the time. Just over 12 minutes gone.
He's been cautious. He went through the first checkpoint 22 seconds slower than Mikhail Kwiatkowski and Geraint Thomas. But he's not on his backside like Alejandro Valverde.
And when we get to Paris, we won't be comparing him to Geraint Thomas and Mikhail Kwiatkowski. Porte's got to race the men challenging around him for overall classification honours. He had enough trouble last year. Puncture on stage 2. He crashed on the way to the Saint-Gervais Mont Blanc. Just avoid trouble.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop.
An 11-time stage winner, Andre Greipel, He's won a stage in every Grand Tour he has started since 2008. He is Mr. Reliable, and the German is so proud to be racing through the streets of Dusseldorf. Chavanel in the colours of Direct Energy, who made the worst decision on team selection coming into this year's Tour de France by not selecting Brian Coquard, a potential stage winner in the sprints, because he was honest enough to tell the team early that he wouldn't renew with them. He's going to one of the World Tour teams. So he's guaranteed to start the big races, as opposed to with this squad relying on the wild card.
Rotten decision. And it's cutting their own nose off to spite their face. Brian Coquard is one of the most exciting riders in France. This is one of the most exciting in Germany, especially today.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The next 14 kilometres will define the season of Tony Martin. The four-time world champion rides in the rainbow jersey on home soil, chasing yellow.
Now, Matt, I know I've complained about white jerseys and the abundance of them in this tour. You've got to love this one. And what a fairy tale it will be for Tony Martin, four-time world champion, in front of his own countrymen to win the opening stage in a grand depart of the Tour de France in Germany. Tony Martin, 14 kilometres to go, plenty of corners, plenty of danger. We've seen it with Valverde, but this man's the big favourite.
Stay upright, Tony. There are three riders in the race with the surname of Martin. None of them related, and all of different nationalities. A German, a Frenchman, and an Irishman.
Walk into a...
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
Marcel Kittel, the big German, he may have made his reputation in the pro peloton as a sprinter with 9 stage wins in this race, but he was a junior world champion against the clock. Here comes Richie Portes. The time of Geraint Thomas, that has flown by 16:04. Richie, understandably so, he was cautious through the corners.
Well, we were talking about that time, the 17-minute barrier rather. Looks like Richie becoming a little bit closer to that than he may have liked, but he's upright, everything's intact, his general classification ambitions as well.
Richie Porte coming towards the line, starting his campaign to become the second Australian to win the Tour de France. And he's in the same colours as it happened in 2011 with Cadel Evans. Porte, not a great start, but he's avoided the damage of others. 16:51. Don't measure his time against the quickest Geraint Thomas. We wait for the arrival of Chris Froome. This is the British national champion, Steve Cummings, who won a brilliant stage last year and the year before.
Well, we've talked of a couple of riders' comebacks. Steve Cummings has come from having a major shoulder injury, having it repaired, making his comeback at the British National Championships, won the time trial, then won the road race, comes in as dual national champion and trying to back up what he's done over the last couple of years.
Geraint Thomas.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop.
The French national road champion, Arnaud Démare, is down the ramp. Next to start will be Louis Meintjes, then Fabio Aru, Stefan Kung, Alberto Contador, Nairo Quintana, Pierre Latour, and the last man away will be Chris Froome. Just 7 minutes before Chris Froome starts his title defence again.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop.
10 years ago, Alberto Contador won the Tour de France for the first time. Only one man has had a 10-year gap between winning the Tour for the first time and winning it again, and that was Gino Bartali. His gap was interrupted by the Second World War. For Contador, he's had different fights on his hand throughout his career.
Well, one thing Alberto Contador is going for is the sock height competition. Those overshoes, well, there is a regulation on them. See if anything's said, but they're definitely the highest ones I've ever seen. But Contador, after last year, he'll be happy if he gets to the end of this time trial with the rubber side down. This is Taylor Phinney in his first tour.
Taylor Phinney, just like Stefan Kung, a former world champion in the individual pursuit. Under 23 world champion against the clock. He collected that title in Geelong. His mum was the first ever Olympic road race champion for women way back in '84. His dad was a stage winner at the Tour de France. It's been a lifetime dream for Taylor Phinney to come to the Tour. He won't get the time of Geraint Thomas, but mum and dad will be proud, and rightly so. This has been a stellar performance for Taylor Phinney. He's come back from a horrific injuries at the National Championships just over a year ago, and he's inside the top 10.
Great ride from Phinney, and as you just said, a long comeback trail after that horrific injury to his knee. Severed the patella tendon, so to be where he is now, sitting inside the top 10 at this point of the Tour de France opening time trial. Chapeau, Taylor Phinney, and welcome to the Tour de France.
In that crash, he broke his fibula and tibula, shattered the kneecap, and the tendon damage that you mentioned.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop.
Nairo Quintana, the third last rider to start. He's ridden the Tour de France 3 times before. He's always been on the podium. Can he reach the top step?
Oh, like so many we've seen before, spinning out of the start house. If he can reach the top step, that remains to be seen. A different race program for him this year leading into the Tour de France. Last year, light on racing. This year, he's got the Giro in his legs. I think he started it well underdone, but now it's about Tony Martin, because look at that intermediate split, 1 second ahead of the game.
Tony Martin is in with a chance to give the Germans something to smile about. Sylvain Chabanel now in his 17th Tour de France. Every season within his career, he's ridden the Tour. 6-time French national champion against the clock. He's ageless, and he's got another year to go on his contract. He'll be in breakaways.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The 3-time winner, Chris Froome, makes a start. He's aiming for victory number 4, and this is where it gets underway.
It's sometimes the little things you notice about how composed people are, how confident they are. Chris Froome did not spin out of the start house. Under control, cautious, getting it all right.
Well, an update on Alejandro Valverde, courtesy of Movistar. He's in an ambulance. He's on his way to hospital with a possible fracture to that left leg as he hit that barrier. That's what I feared. It looks like it may well be coming true. Valverde, sadly, one of the great animators of the race, is out. For Nairo Quintana, that's a key teammate gone in his attempt to dislodge number 1, Chris Froome.
Yeah, above all, sad news for Alejandro himself, but also a real blow to the team and the chances of Nairo Quintana. But Chris Froome, he's unaware of everything going on around him. He's concentrating on one thing only, his time trial, getting himself around this course safely, fast, but safety first.
Priority number 1, stay upright, get to the finish line. Chris Froome, the last rider to start, is now out on course. Throttle, for those of you that understand gear ratios, and plenty of you will, he rides a 58 tooth chainring at the front and the 11 sprocket at the back. It is enormous.
To put that in perspective, Richie Porte was riding with a 56.
Tony Martin aiming for the time of Geraint Thomas. 16 minutes and 4 seconds. He's inside the final 800 metres.
And you hear the crowd, Tony, Tony. All the German fans are behind Tony Martin, willing him on to get this win. Under 600 metres to go. 15:40 goes by. 24 seconds for 450 metres.
Geraint Thomas watches on nervously. It's the 4-time world champion breathing down the neck of that 16:04 time. It will be close. Tony Martin looks up to the scoreboard. 4 seconds to arrive. Geraint Thomas is holding on. Tony Martin misses the time, and Geraint Thomas is still in the position of wearing the first yellow jersey. It's 16:12 for Tony Martin. He faded on the final part of the course. The Welshman can breathe.
I'm honestly shocked. I'd called him as being only the best part of the course for him. Wasn't able to bring it home like Geraint Thomas. No slouch himself, don't get me wrong. Expected a little bit more from Tony Martin.
Well, we've still got 12 riders to come across the finish line. Let's hope they all get there safely. That is priority number one, particularly for Chris Froome. After what we...
The Contador, 16 and a half gone, not bad.
He'll be outside the time of Richie Porte, only just. Alberto Contador, the course, it hasn't favoured the Spaniard. He's had a different approach to this year's Tour de France. He has said he's going to be a little less aggressive and look for consistency. He scrapes inside 17 minutes, but only just.
Same time as Aru,
with a lot of work to do.
In fact, 1 second slower than Fabio Aru. Next one to come in, Nairo Quintana, and it looks like he's going to be around that same mark, just inside that 17 minutes. Under 600 metres to go. A lot of our GC contenders and pure climbers all coming in around the same mark. Chris Froome looks like he's about to blow them away on day one.
He will be putting himself to the top of the table amongst the favourites for the final yellow jersey. There is no question. Nairo Quintana, he will be inside 17 minutes, but not by a lot at this rate. Quintana is struggling with the long run through to the finish. He hasn't raced since the Giro d'Italia. He's been back at home in Colombia, and it's 16:52 for Nairo Quintana. 51st position. Last year when he rode the Tour de France, he had number 51 on his back.
Oh, with that, Quintana gives away about 6 seconds to Richie Porte, but he's in front of Contador and Aru. This is Pierre Latour, the French time trial champion from L'Age d'Isère.
The 23-year-old Pierre Latour. He won the final mountain stage at last year's Volta a España with a bold performance, getting the better of Darwin Atapuma. Today, a solid ride in the colours of the French national champion, 16:29. One rider to come, and that is Chris Froome. Here he comes, Chris Froome. It's his teammate, Geraint Thomas, who only awaits the arrival of the defending champion. Geraint Thomas, that 16:04 is safe. But where does Chris Froome land, and how much time does he gain on all his big rivals for the final yellow jersey? Thomas watches on. The nerves fly away. He'll be in a yellow jersey for the first time. A moment for it to sink in. But the clock for Froome, it's not the comparison to his teammate Thomas. It's the clock compared to Porte, Contador and Bardet. And he's better, significantly better. The fourth best time for Chris Froome. He reminds everybody why he's won it 3 times. He is definitely the man to beat.
Düsseldorf, and there is our result. Geraint Thomas, Great Britain from Team Sky in 16:04, holding off Stefan Kung by 5 seconds. Another Sky rider, Vasil Kirienka in third. Tony Martin, the big German hope, 4th place for him today, the 4-time world champion in the time trial. Matteo Trentin, there's a dark horse in 5th. Chris Froome in 6th, 12 seconds behind his teammate, but importantly, a good 30 seconds ahead of Richie Porte. Jos van Emden 7th, Kwiatkowski, another Sky rider in 8th. Marcel Kittel giving himself a sniff of yellow in the coming days. And Edvald Boasson-Hagen rounding out the top 10.
Really looking forward to the interview with Geraint Thomas. Well, Geraint Thomas is all smiles, but there are 2 riders that didn't make it through the finish line.
Yeah, Matt, we talked about Alejandro Valverde, that fall in that left-hand corner, and that same corner claimed another victim, another Spaniard. Jon Izagirre from the Bahrain Merida team fell in the same place, did not finish the time trial. He is out of the Tour de France on day 1. So 2 high-profile riders, and Izagirre was the absolute leader of his team, of Bahrain Merida. So that's a huge blow for that team already on the very first day.
Kilometre 0 awaits. It will be farewell to Dusseldorf as they head towards Liège. Christian Prudhomme, the race director, he waves the flag. He'll duck back into the team car. Not the team car, the lead car, as the first attack is on. It's Fortunato Oscaro attacking. Direct Energy directly behind them. No reaction at this point as yet from the peloton. The first obstacle of the day, the Côte de Grafenberg, which is a Category 4 climb. It starts in just 5 kilometres time. An opportunity for somebody to get themselves some points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey.
One of the Cannondale Drapac riders coming across to those two riders on the attack, and behind, a lot of riders really trying to shut things down, let that small group go. One of those, Marcel Seeberg from Lotto Soudal, riding for Andre Greipel, keen to see a very small group get up the road. So if these three can break the elastic, there's one more rider coming across from the Wanty Group Gobert, and could that be Guillaume van Kiersbroeks, a large figure looming in the background, trying to get back on terms with these three.
Well, Taylor Phinney, in his first Tour de France, he rode brilliantly yesterday. His mum and dad were there to watch him. His father, Davis Phinney, went on American television with him on NBC. Mum, who's one of the all-time greats of cycling, Connie Carpenter, she stayed in the background. But Taylor Phinney making an impact on the race after a strong performance yesterday. The constant checking across the shoulder, and as expected, the wildcard teams, Direct Energy, Fortunato, and Wanty Group Gobert. It looks like Johan Alfredo who's trying to come across from that squad. But the Cofidis team, the fourth of the wildcards, they're not interested in the breakaway because they have one of the favourites in the sprint finish. They'll be looking after Nasser Bouhanni. The peloton, Robbie, they look pretty happy with the composition of that break.
And a lot of Sky riders patrolling the front of the peloton as well. They're also keen to see a small group go away. Makes for a relatively easy and straightforward day for the team of the yellow jersey and for the sprinters teams with a small group going off the front. They'll allow them quite a lot of leeway, I'll imagine, but have them always on the end of the line. They can just start to reel them back in later on in the day. But the battle up front will be for that 1 point available on the Category 4 climb after 5 kilometres, the Côte de Grafenberg. I don't think they call it the Côte de here in Germany, but this is the Tour de France.
Precisely.
Exactement. And now Alfredo has made contact. It's now a foursome.
4 riders out in front. Johan Alfredo has made contact at the back with huge crowds stretching along the outskirts of Dusseldorf. Peloton all fairly calm. Team Sky clearly pretty happy with the composition of that breakaway, and they'll hope that it won't be too long before it's the teams of the sprinters who take responsibility at the front of the main field. How much time do you think they'll allow this breakaway group of 4 to gain on them?
Well, on a 200-kilometre stage like today's, not too complicated and slight headwind, I think they'll allow them somewhere up to 7 or 8 minutes, something like that, possibly even more. Just depends who's prepared to be organised to do the chase behind.
The Chateau de Benrath that we're now getting a chance to take a look at. Beautiful old chateau. Lovely English-style gardens around it. It's one of the largest in the North Rhine region. Dates back to the 12th century. Back in 1648, the Imperial troops destroyed some of the fortification that was around it. Direct Energy, they've managed to get one rider in the move, which is Thomas Boudet, a debutant, another one of the first-timers in the race. For the Fortunato Oscaro team, the rider that they've moved into the breakaway is Laurent Pichon. And the Cannondale Drapac team, with one of the strongest amongst the young American contingent in this race, managing to make it into the breakaway in his first attempt at the Tour de France, is Taylor Phinney. And Johan Alfredo is the next rider to come through, riding for the Wanty Group Gobert team. This is Christian Knies at the front with the yellow helmet on, the tallest of the riders from Team Sky. He was part of the contingent that supported Bradley Wiggins to victory in the Tour de France back in 2012. He's been absent for the last few years. A great chance for him to ride on home soil, a former 19th place finisher in his own right in the Tour de France, and a former German national champion. The rider in the blue colours from the Quick-Step team, that was Julien Vermont, riding towards the front of the peloton. They'll be one of the teams required to do the chasing as this break continues to build its lead.
And all remaining calm back in the peloton. Team Sky patrolling the front in their new kit, the white jerseys, but easier to spot with those yellow helmets on today. So that's a bit of a godsend that they've been leading the team's classification after yesterday's time trial. 4 riders in the top 8. Quite a commanding lead already in that competition. You see Pichon, now Boudin going over the top. And they'll be just starting to think now about this Category 4 King of the Mountain Sprint. Boudin looking over the shoulder. He's definitely thinking about it.
Well, they're already approaching the base of that climb. They've got a couple of kilometres yet before they get to the base of it. In fact, a little bit less than that. The climb itself is just 1.5 kilometres long. Has an average gradient of 4.5%. And I think that the French riders in this break will have their hands full trying to contend with Taylor Phinney. It's not super steep. Sure, he's big. He's not a natural climber. He's got so much power, and he was so strong yesterday. He was 12th on the stage yesterday, just 17 seconds behind the winner, Geraint Thomas.
Well, these riders will now know, after seeing the board, 1 minute 35 was the time gap that they were given. That will already be more than that, so they're pretty secure that they're away for the day now. And they can afford to just look at each other, get a little bit tactical as they come towards the top of this Category 4 climb, to see who's going to get that 1 point and put himself in the box seat to pull on the jersey at the end of the day. But there's another Cat 4 right at the end. It's a long way to go to get another point, and be sure that whoever wins that second one, that'll be the person receiving the polka dot jersey at the end of the day.
There's the rider in the red colours from Lotto Soudal. That's Tony Galopin, and you can see his ankle all strapped up. Fortunately, he's been able to get a shoe onto it. Boudin, the young Frenchman, a former star on the track. He, in fact, has been the Omnium World Champion on the track, so he'll be super quick. Johan Alfredo now. He's the first to open up. It was a false start. He's waiting. Boudin will be difficult to beat. Omnium World Champion on the track in 2014, so he'll be quick. He'll be really quick.
Controlling the front, looking at Pichon, rides him across, looking over the other shoulder. Pichon nearly puts himself over the wheel. Phinney goes.
Phinney makes a move. Boudin is the first to respond. He tries desperately to get into the slipstream of the strong American, but Taylor Phinney has got the pipes open, and he collects 1 point in the race for the King of the Mountains classification. Taylor Phinney delivers. Objective number 1 accomplished after just 6.5 kilometres.
Well, in the end, he made that look extremely easy. Boudin was controlling the front like a real track rider, keeping them on the hip. But when Phinney went, immediately opened up that gap. Just too much power from the American. 1 point to Taylor Phinney. But as we said, he needs to get the other one to ensure himself a visit to the podium. Unless, of course, he wins the Brandt Prix de Combativité, excuse me, the most combative rider. Although it was a Frenchman who attacked first.
And they often get the prize, or the one who's caught last.
If I was in the breakaway and I heard the message, the peloton's just riding tempo, Thomas de Gendt is on the front, that'd really take my morale away.
Take the wind out of your sails. This looks like this might be the Berg Chateau that we're getting a chance to take a look at now. With a beautiful moat around the outside of it. We have just joined us, that breakaway group of 4. It formed very early on in the piece, and it was an immediate attack courtesy of the Fortunato Oscaro team, and the rider that forced the breakaway, that was Laurent Pichon. He was then quickly joined by Taylor Phinney, along with Thomas Boudat.
This is actually Lynn Castle, or in French, the Chateau de Lynn.
And it was a fortified castle that dates back from the 12th century on the Rhine, surrounded by moats, and it's been converted into a museum showing much of the local folklore of the Dusseldorf region. It's been a great opportunity over the past few days to explore Dusseldorf, and great for the Tour to come back to Germany 30 years on from that historic Grand Depart in 1987, right up against the wall that separated the East and the West, the Berlin Wall, which just a few years later came down. In the breakaway, the man that is on picture, this is Taylor Phinney. They've been over one climb already. Taylor Phinney collecting the 1 point that was up for grabs. Just to get through the Tour 6 years in a row safely is a feat in itself.
Feat in itself just to get to the start line 6 times in a row.
To get to the start line full stop is quite a feat. What's Laurent Pichon doing? The rider in the white colours from Fortunato Oscaro. I thought perhaps he might have been laying off to try and pick up this intermediate sprint, but it's not the case. Johan Alfredo still setting the tempo at the front, 500 metres remaining. Bragging rights, points up for grabs in the race for the green jersey. A small time bonus as well, but that really is academic for this group.
Well, Taylor Phinney, he showed he was the fastest on top of that first climb of the day of the Category 4, kicking away. Can he prove that again on the flat?
Well, Taylor Phinney, he sits in 12th position overall at 17 seconds down. He's got the former world Omnium champion, the black colours, sitting on his wheel. Alfredo is showing no signs of contesting the sprint. He just wants to maintain the breaks rhythm. It's Taylor Phinney who opens up the pipes first. Boudet is trying to come at him. Phinney with the strength. The young Frenchman, though, with the speed. It's going to be desperately close. It's Thomas Boudet who gets the points ahead of Taylor Phinney. Laurent Pichon in 3rd position, and then Johan Alfredo in 4th.
Well, Matt, ominous for the peloton that's going to come up. Did you see the back wheel of Taylor Phinney? Keep an eye on his back wheel as he comes just out from the line, middle of the road, white line, back wheel just skipping away out to the left. So that's giving him a right scare. You see it now from head on as he comes to the middle of the road on that white line, back wheel out to the side. Boudet, faster on the flat, got the slipstream, came out of the wheel. A lot of water on the road. And that just proves again, you've got to avoid those white lines. We saw the crashes yesterday. I'm sure there'll be plenty of riders very, very cautious. But Marcel Kittel is up there with the Quick Step team. On the right of picture, it's Katusha Alpecin for Alexander Kristoff. Left of picture, Bahrain Merida. That will be for Sonny Colbrelli, trying to get himself up there and could prove to be a contender in the green jersey competition. Very versatile and very quick. Michael Matthews getting himself onto the back of the Katusha train as well, in the black and white on the left of the bunch.
And there is Mark Cavendish. 3 riders from Dimension Data. Peter Sagan up there on his own. Sunweb riders coming forward to protect the interests of Michael Matthews. The Katusha Alpecin team, they've got a strong representation with 4 riders at the head of affairs. 4th position is the man they're looking after, and that is Alexander Kristoff. The red colours to the right-hand side, Bahrain Merida for Sonny Colbrelli.
Kittel finds his own way now. He's on to the back of Colbrelli on the right of picture. Peter Sagan up through the middle, shoulder to shoulder with the rider from Sunweb. Kittel on the right, Sagan on the left. They're in 5th and 6th position. Katusha pulling the sprint at the moment. Kristoff in 2nd as they start to line themselves up.
And now Sonny Colbrelli, he is the first to go. Peter Sagan, he lets that wheel slide. It's Alexander Kristoff who sits in 2nd position. Colbrelli at the front. Kristoff moving over the top of him. A sprint for 5th place. And it is Alexander Kristoff just in front of Sonny Colbrelli. Then it was Michael Matthews. And Peter Sagan, he faded, saving his energy. That was not a full gas effort by the world champion.
No, it looked to me like just making sure he got some points, but put himself out in the wind quite early. Wanted to follow Colbrelli, but came shoulder to shoulder with Alexander Kristoff. Kristoff trying to get back over the top of Colbrelli. Katusha Alpecin had done all the work in that lead out, well organised. Kristoff gets the points. Colbrelli, Matthews, Demard, Kittel. And I think even Greipel may have just sailed his way past Peter Sagan. No, Sagan actually in front of Kittel on the line. Greipel behind that.
This is Sonny Colbrelli with the gold helmet on. He's riding the Tour de France for the first time. How important is that first intermediate sprint for him to get some of the nerves out of the way?
It's good to get the nerves out of the way if you can be at the front and put some of the fast guys behind you. It's a good confidence booster, but it really doesn't tell you everything about what's going to happen at the finish. But you do get an indication of who the best organised teams are, and Katusha did a good job of taking control there. And if it's wet like that at the finish, being in position will be more important than ever.
This is the Kaiser Friedrich Hall, which was built between 1902 and 1903. It's a concert hall, a theatre, there's a conference centre, there's a restaurant overlooking the gardens.
And you can always rely on him to do something worth talking about in the Tour de France. And even if he does nothing, it's still worthy of getting on TV. Our French producers love him. And today it's his teammate who's had more time on the camera, Thomas Boudat, from the Direct Energy team. Crash!
Big ball in the peloton, the yellow jersey is amongst them. Team Sky, all the riders in the white colours. That's Chris Froome just picking himself up. These are the risks of stages in the rain. Through this roundabout, it would have been pretty simple in the dry. A bunch of Cofidis riders down. Waiting for more confirmation on the riders that have gone down. UAE with a couple of riders caught up in amongst it. That's Robert Geesink in the yellow colours of Lotto NL Jumbo.
Tom Leeser.
Dago Ulisi is the rider from UAE. Olivier Naesen is waiting, and Romain Bardet is in there. There's Romain Bardet, number 11, second in the race overall last year. Michael Shah is the rider from BMC. Richie Porte is not there.
This is Chris Froome.
Chris Froome still waiting. Team Sky now getting themselves organised. There he is, Chris Froome.
Kwiatkowski with him, Christian Knies. So a bit of a chase coming up for Team Sky, and a big scare. Going down with virtually the whole team through that roundabout. Didn't even have to go all the way round the roundabout. Just that very slight curve was enough to bring them undone. And there must have been 40 riders on the ground initially through that roundabout. Absolute carnage.
This shows you how quickly things can change. Yesterday, Chris Froome would have gone to bed full of confidence. 4 riders from Team Sky inside the top 8, taking 30 seconds and more on all of his key rivals. A lot of skin off for Chris Froome, and now the chase is on to return to the peloton.
Well, Matt, we said it a matter of 5 minutes ago. Totally in control, everything looking good, having a dream run, but things can be turned around on their head in a microsecond, and that is exactly what just happened.
He's down to one teammate because Christian Knies, who was also caught up in that crash, he has lost contact, but at the front of the peloton they're waiting. And it was a rider from Katusha by the looks of it. On the inside, just slipped out, and domino effects taking everybody with him. Froome still looking calm. He checks across the shoulder. The tempo, it hasn't completely stopped. Lotto Soudal were going to the front to try and shut it down. Peter Sagan now in conversation with Adam Hansen. What do we do at this point? Jane McCarthy for the first time up towards the front. Here comes Chris Froome. The rider from BMC is Damiano Caruso, the key climbing lieutenant for Richie Porte. Christian Knies has returned, number 4. The big German is now on the front.
Well, initially it looked like they were slowing at the front. Bardet is now returning to this group of Froome, so I think they'll come back no problem. It looked like the peloton initially was slowing all across the road, but nobody's willing to give up their position at the front, so that pace is still just being pushed that little bit. It'll be a chase they don't want to have to make, but I think they'll come back okay.
The question then will be, what is the damage physically? Not on the clock, but physically. When Cadel Evans had that crash midway through the Tour de France in 2008, that perhaps was the moment where he lost the Tour, rather than the stage in the mountains to Alpe d'Huez, as Carlos Sastre got through everything safely, but the injuries caught up with Cadel. The injuries today could catch up with Froome and Bardet in week 3.
Well, things can change so very quickly, and this might be just the thing that helps the breakaway group off the front make it to that KOM as well. If the peloton decides, all right, we're going to stop and not stop, but slow and wait till everybody's back together. See this crash again as they enter the roundabout. Third wheel, fourth wheel. One of the riders from Katusha just lost the front wheel, taking everybody out all at once. Richie Port was right up there in the middle, and he stays upright. Great control from Richie, taking a straight line straight ahead, not panicking, not hard braking. Managed to see he was right in amongst it. Importantly, stayed upright.
Chris Froome was frightfully unlucky. Just right. He was in the right place. He was at the front. He's where you're meant to be.
That's the thing with the Tour de France peloton, especially in the wet. You never know where is the right place and the wrong place at the wrong time.
So the chase is now on. This is Mark Al-Idris out the front for Trek Segafredo. Sitting in second position. You've seen the hand signals just to try and slow things down. Jay McCarthy, the Queenslander, his first time at the Tour de France, is at the front and behaving like one of the mature members of the peloton. He's got a good head on some young shoulders.
Well, just threw another roundabout there, so I'm sure the peloton is quite spooked by what happened at the last one. So very easy as they go through there. It's now notable to see that Peter Sagan has put his team on the front just to take control of things, not pushing the pace really that much, as we now see Froome and Bardet come to that same roundabout. Left side, wrong side, further around, more cornering to make. The riders on the right, you see the difference in speed and how many positions they made up. But they're already back almost in contact with the back of the peloton. Now they've got to try and get back to the front of it. With everybody so spooked, that's no easy feat.
That's Christian Knies.
It was Knies who took the left side of the roundabout. He's lost contact with his chasing teammates.
Romain Bardet, Olivier Nazen just in front of him. The Belgium national champion in the wet on Belgium soil looks so composed, and that's exactly why he was recruited to this team, to look after Romain Bardet. Marcel Seberg and Lars Bak, the two riders at the front in the red colours. Nasser Bouhanni has avoided all the carnage from Cofidis. There's the rear end of the peloton, and it's a long peloton. There's plenty of senior riders at the front trying to slow things down, but there's others thinking, well, we still need to catch the breakaway because we want our man to win the stage. Not everybody has the same objectives within the race. And it's not basketball, there's no time out. You can't go and talk to Pat Riley and get the fresh instructions with 24 kilometres to go.
Well, as we say that, here's the return of both Bardet and Froome. So the physical damage doesn't seem to be too bad for Chris Froome. Maybe a few little cuts and scrapes. Certainly a pair of torn shorts. There's Robert Schiesink coming back. Quick Step now riding in there together with Bora Hansgrohe. So the teams of Sagan and Kittel joining forces to control the front of the peloton. Right behind them in red, Lotto Soudal for Andre Greipel.
Philippe Gilbert coming towards the front.
On the left, I spotted a Movistar rider, and I'm sure right behind him was one Nairo Quintana.
And still at the front, the yellow jersey, Geraint Thomas, and with him was Mikel Landa and Sergio Henao, the Colombian climber. Here comes Romain Bardet charging up around the outside. The Belgium national champion, Olivier Nazen. He is drilling it for AG2R Le Mondial.
Well, Matt, the roads are still dry here at the finish in Liège. The rider's now just 23 kilometres away. Hopefully for them very soon, and before they get that descent at 20 kilometres to go, things will improve for them too. This is Froome with his hand in the air, requiring assistance.
Race radio making the call. Sky for Froome, sky for Froome. There'll be more white jerseys dropping back. He's got one just behind him. There's Christian Knies. He'll be right up alongside Chris and asking him what the problem is. 22 kilometres to go. If a mechanical problem here requires a bike change, well, you did it in Canterbury, you returned and you won the stage. The circumstances here in the rain are a little different, and he's got bark off.
He's got some skin off, but also a crash like that when you go down. These bikes are fairly fragile. It wouldn't surprise me if he's maybe bent the tip that holds the derailleur. and that his gears aren't changing very well. So he may be up for a very quick bike change, Chris Froome, and in for another chase. So what was looking like panning out to be an ideal day for Team Sky, especially after yesterday. 4 in the top 8, yellow jersey, no work today, but now Chris Froome is on the back foot.
Day 1 on the open roads with a successful individual time trial behind them. It's stage 2 heading towards Liège, a crash and now a bike change, 22 kilometres remaining, and Chris Froome's defence is on the back foot. Kwiatkowski for support. You couldn't ask for a better man, could you?
It's good to have supportive teammates, but also when you're coming back through the convoy, sometimes better to be on your own to get pole position on the back of one of those cars. They turn a blind eye to a bit of slipstreaming coming back after a mechanical problem, but at the moment he does actually need this help to cross the gap to get to those cars. And be assured of one thing, it's all going to be above board because the cameras will not leave him alone. We'll see every single bit, and the French will be making sure he's doing it the way he should do it.
Another crash in the peloton. Andre Amador from Movistar has just gone down, according to Race Radio. And there he is, Amador on the side of the road. So the nervous tension will be increasing, and that will be making Chris Froome even more anxious through these slippery turns.
It just gives you an insight to how nervous it is in the peloton as we look at the break coming towards the top of the Category 4, 1 kilometre. So they are going to make it, it looks like 27 seconds, a small gap. It's only a matter of a couple hundred metres on this climb. They get to fight it out to try and get the polka dot jersey. But where Amador fell wasn't in the corner, it was in a straight. So the nervous tension in the peloton, really fighting for position. Looks like he's just gone down, maybe a touch of wheels. But at the moment, turn our attention. Taylor Phinney, he's got the 1 point from the first climb. He needs to win this climb to assure himself of the polka dot jersey.
And now Knies and Kwiatkowski lining up behind the team car with Chris Froome. And Froome, he crashed onto the right-hand side, so clearly he's damaged the bike, he's damaged the derailleur, the rear gear mechanism, and that's what required the bike change. They can't spend too much time behind each individual car, Robbie.
No, they can't, but the thing in Froome's advantage, if there's any, is that they're going uphill now. He's going to cross the gap on a 1 kilometre climb, right up his alley. Much better than having to cross it on a flat section. He can see the peloton right there. He needs to get himself back towards the front. And that's the problem. They go over the top and start that descent we've talked about and we've been told about. Quite tricky, bit technical. You really need to slow down for the corners, and they're slippery. We could see that all play out all over again.
Almost at the top of the climb for the breakaway. They have made it. They will not be caught. Alfredo at the front. Perichon is now attacking. The man who started the breakaway, Taylor Phinney, he won the first climb. If he can get the points, he guarantees himself the King of the Mountains jersey. He's closing in on the Frenchman. The young American, he can see the banner in front of him. He had horsepower yesterday. He's almost running out of road. He might not have enough room on the left-hand side. Perichon is fighting. Phinney gets there. There'll be polka dots tomorrow.
You didn't have to see him from the front to see the determination of Phinney. It looked for one moment like he thought to himself, I'm not going to catch him. Clawed his way back centimetre by centimetre. 2 wins in both Cat 4s. Taylor Phinney, first Tour de France, first podium appearance, 1 polka dot jersey. Mission accomplished.
Chapeau, Taylor Phinney. What courage coming back from that awful crash in the US National Championships a few years ago. He'll be the wearer of a leader's jersey in the Tour de France in his first appearance.
Look at the...
Bear was in amongst it as well.
On the right of picture, Dimension Data, Bernie Eisel, Edward Bossenhagen for Mark Cavendish, our leaders under the 4 kilometre banner, still holding a 30-second advantage over the peloton. But back there, things are getting real.
Now it's starting to heat up. Juraj Sagan, Jack Bauer checking across, and ironically, it was the sprinters who spoilt the day for Jack Bauer into Nîmes when he'd been off the front for more than 200 kilometres. He's trying to do that today and destroy the hopes of Taylor Phinney and Johan Alfredo.
These are 2 very good time trialists, these 2 riders. Alfredo, he's a good time trialist in his own right. We know Taylor Phinney is and what his ability zone time trialing 26 seconds. So things are really picking up in the peloton now as Jack Bauer went to the front and really started to wind things up. It's just a case of which team is going to lay it down first and try and go all the way in, as we see Tony Galopin back off the peloton now, save himself and try and recover. Quick Step in control at the moment, but the rest are hovering left and right.
Here comes Dimension Data looking after Cavendish. He'll be the last in line. He's alongside Sunweb, who are protecting Michael Matthews. It's still Jack Bauer who is on the front of the peloton.
Left of picture, Niels Pollitt from Katusha bringing Alexander Kristoff. Far left, Carlos Betancourt, Nairo Quintana hovering around there somewhere as well. Jack Bauer now swings off with less than 3 kilometres, or right on 3 kilometres for the peloton. These two riders now at 2.6, but look at that time gap, 14 seconds now. They'll pretty much have them in their sights. No more cars between, only a motorbike next to them. The peloton about to eat them up, and Taylor Phinney about to eat his head stem.
Well, they've been off the front now for 200 kilometres. 201, in fact. They're just 2.3 remaining. Taylor Phinney and Johan Alfredo have been heroes of the day. But what will the bigger story be? The stage winner or the crash to Froome? It's yet to unfold. Bahrain Merida coming forward for Sonny Colbrelli.
Right of picture, Dimension Data looking well organised. 4 or 5 riders. Arnaud Demar in the French champion jersey right in the centre, but now sticking his nose in the wind. Lotto Soudal starting to make their move for Andre Greipel right up the middle in the red jerseys.
And riders slipping off the back that have been doing work all day long. This is Adam Hansen and Thomas de Gendt. Thomas Voeckler.
But it's time to see the front of the race. Our two riders, oh, there they are, right in front like prey. They've got them.
Taylor Phinney, Johan Alfredo. They've been full of courage all day long, but they just don't have enough watts left in the engine. Alfredo, though, he's not surrendering. You have to come and collect. Steve Cummings still in contact at the back of the peloton.
Well, it looks like our two leaders are going to make it into the last kilometre, maybe just or maybe just not quite. Lotto Soudal have now opened up 1.3 kilometres to go. So Greipel has given the go-ahead for his team to go as we're approaching the final kilometre. And here now is the catch. Phinney and Alfredo are done. It's sprint time.
At 1 kilometre to go, the breakaway of more than 200 kilometres gets caught. It's Tish Benoot who is on the front. And now we're seeing the train for Dylan Groenewegen come around the outside with the yellow and black kit from Lotto NL Jumbo. Marcel Seeberg at the front.
Seeberg takes it up for Lotto. Jürgen Rouland's in his wheel. Andre Greipel behind him. They come out of the slipstream the other side of the road. It's Bora Hansgrohe for Peter Sagan. Also Sunweb trying to bring Matthews to the front. Greipel's tucked in the middle trying to find a way out. He gives the go-ahead, but he's lost his lead-out man. And Nasser Bouhanni is there.
He's waiting. Nasser Bouhanni is on the wheel of the world champion Peter Sagan. Dylan Groenewegen is getting into the mix. He's rubbing elbows with Andre Greipel. It's Sonny Colbrelli who tries to go first. Greipel opens up the pipes, but it's the world champion Sagan. Colbrelli, Kittel coming around the outside. The challenge from Cavendish, but it's Kittel who is the king in Liège.
Unsighted in the final kilometre, Marcel Kittel, everyone bumping, forcing their way into position. As they all started their sprint, he suddenly appeared. They didn't know he was coming. They must have felt it coming as the wave came out of the top of them. Matteo Trentin in the background, he knows it already. Marcel Kittel, the big favourite of the day, riding out of Germany into Belgium and on to the podium. Kittel gets his 10th.
It seems fitting because it was a perfect performance. Kittel, the emotion overflows. Kittel. He dealt with it comfortably. And look at Matteo Trentin in the background. He got the arms up very early. At 50 metres to go, he knew Kittel was home and hosed. Arno Demar in second position. Andre Greipel third. Mark Cavendish fourth. And Dylan Groenewegen in fifth. Nasu Buhani in the red colours. No sign of Fabio Aru in there, as we suspected. An error in the graphic, surely. This is pretty much the biggest lead they've had. I think 2:10 is the maximum advantage that they've had throughout today's stage. That's like we saw yesterday. The peloton not giving the break any breathing space at all. And a lot of that is coming down to the work of Julien Vermont for the second day running. The team, Trek Segafredo, that you can see with the red helmets and the white kit off to the left-hand side of the screen. First in line is Mark Al-Irazar, but in third position is John Degenkolb. One of the many Germans in the race was Marcel Kittel, who was the winner yesterday. And just perhaps if everything goes right, maybe John Degenkolb can challenge for today's stage victory. They've got Alberto Contador though on that team that they need to look after. But perhaps for Trek Segafredo, you can just see him poking to the picture with the frizzy hair behind Alberto Contador, Fabio Follini, the Italian. He's quick, he's punchy, and he can climb pretty well. A few more teams now starting to come to the front. Just noted Matt Heyman for Orica Scott towards the head of the race.
Well, I was just going to mention the breeze. When we saw Team Trek Segafredo, and they're on the extreme right-hand side of the road, but the way Team Sky were fanned across the road from the middle over to the left, just a bit more of a breeze blowing as they're on one of the higher points of the course now. To come up on top of one of those plateaus, and the wind starting to play a little role, so that always just creates just a little element of panic amongst the GC contenders, and then in turn their teams told to keep them out of the wind and keep them at the front just in case. Not that the likelihood of something happening with 140 kilometres to go is big, but you never know, so they don't want to take a chance and get caught out by sitting down the back.
Speaking of sitting down the back, number 78, Thibaut Pinot. Towards the back of yesterday's stage, we spoke a bit about does he let the group go, not worried about the overall classification, aim for stages in the mountains, the King of the Mountains jersey perhaps. He's already finished fourth in the Giro d'Italia this year. He looked as if he was contemplating the strategy you suggested might be on the cards, but then when he saw they were just within reach, he stayed in contact and he didn't lose any time. I think as a guy that's been third in the Tour de France, he's got too much pride to let the group go early and concede time.
I think it came down to that. Just too much pride to let them go at a moment where it really wasn't that difficult. The guys we saw being dropped were the ones who've been doing the work all day long. So it would have been a bit silly almost of them to get dropped right then. The advantage was sitting back further if nothing happens. You've saved quite a bit of energy, because a lot of those teams are using quite a lot of energy staying up near the front and riding, putting riders in the wind all day long on a stage like this with so far to go.
2 minutes and 3 seconds, the advantage for the breakaway group of 6. The big favourite for the race, that's the defending champion. But yesterday, Chris Froome crashed, and we caught up with him today before the stage got underway. Here's Chris Froome.
Obviously, sleeping after a crash is never easy, but that's the nature of the race, and I'm just grateful I wasn't injured yesterday.
What do you expect from the finish today, and what's the team plan?
I think it could be quite a tricky finish, especially, I mean, the last 1.5 Ks uphill could suit someone like Philippe Gilbert, Peter Sagan maybe, but definitely going to be a stressful one. Sprinters, GC guys, all getting in the mix. So for us, hopefully, just try and stay out of trouble, stay up front.
It does have real potential to be a tricky finish towards the back end of today's stage, and Chris Froome is abundantly aware. And this was previously renowned as the highest point in Luxembourg. The big hill at 558 metres high, but then with some GPS satellites, it was later on discovered that Knife Hill, a little bit further away, was 560 metres high, so 2 metres higher than this one. So it lost its mantle as position number 1 as the high point of Luxembourg.
Well, just listening to Chris Froome there, and a few of the other riders all talking about this climb, this 1.6 kilometre uphill to the finish line here in Longwy, and the stress of GC riders and sprinters mixing it together coming into the final kilometres of the race. What makes it more dangerous for those riders, not the 1.6 kilometre uphill, it's the very fast downhill that comes before it and down into the river valley before they tackle this final climb. And it's also with a great big warning sign in the race book, and the riders will have all been made aware of this. From just inside 6 kilometres to go, they dive down. It doesn't look like much on the profile, but when the organisers mark fast descent on that section of the course, I think we're going to be seeing the riders touching speeds around 85, 90 kilometres an hour.
And therefore, everybody that thinks they can win this race overall or finish well placed in the general classification by Paris, they have to treat the final 10 kilometres of today's stage, even if they don't think they can win, doing battle with the likes of Peter Sagan, as if they're trying to win. They have to race at the front with intent. Here's Steve Cummings. He's not racing at the front with intent, and he has read the breakaway correctly today. The day that you see the British national champion in the breakaway is the day where the breakaway is a big chance of surviving.
And it makes a lot more.
1 kilometre to the sprint for the breakaway group of 6. This is the biggest advantage they've had. It's almost 2.5 minutes. Time to celebrate out in front. 124 k's to go.
Very
Perhaps
quickly,
not.
got another minute, but with that amount of kilometres to go, I think they're going to need to really try and push it out to 5 to have any sort of chance. But they're at the mercy of the peloton. One guy I didn't manage to spot in the front of the group was Marcel Kittel. He's pretty easy to spot. He's in a bright green jersey, and he's one of the largest men, if not the largest, in the peloton.
School photos, he was always up the back.
Absolutely.
In the green jersey at the front, but not the green jersey for the points classification. That's the 25-year-old American Nathan Brown, living out a childhood dream. He used to go out riding and daydream about riding the Tour de France. Now he's in it, and he's in the breakaway. He's in second position in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey, and there are lots of points still to come. This is a long stage starting in Belgium. They're currently in Luxembourg. They head to France.
Now, I'm wondering, out of this group of non-sprinters, who will be the most interested in this intermediate sprint? I'm thinking the rider from Fortunato, because it's there, but also Bacart from the Wanty Group Gobert, the Belgian, in just coming up and refusing to go through. He followed the wheel and then slotted himself back into third place.
Clear indication he wants the points, and
Adam
Adam
Hansen
Hansen does too. And Adam Hansen, he's going early, but it's not full blown. Now it's Niels Pollitt who does open up. And the false start from Adam Hansen. In fact, Adam Hansen is not interested. He was just getting them moving. And now it's Niels Pollitt who leads through. Bacart is trying to close it down. 20 points up for grabs. 3-second time bonus. That makes Niels Pollitt now within 38 seconds of the yellow jersey, the virtual race leader. Bacart in second position. And for third, Roman Sicard just pips Adam Hansen, who couldn't be less interested in the intermediate sprint.
Well, Bacart seemed to be showing the most interest, but let himself get surprised by Niels Pollitt, who played a good game of bluff poker there, cruising in the group, not looking like he's going to do anything, saw the opportunity, sliced up through the middle, now having a little chat and a laugh about it.
Now the sprint is on for the minor placings.
Arnaud Démare, he is up there, Francais, fourth wheel, French champion jersey.
It's Michael Delage who's on the front doing the job for him. Michael Matthews is fighting for the position on the wheel of the French national champion. In fact, he's not. It's one of his teammates. He's a little bit further back. Michael Matthews is 2 positions behind the world champion, Peter Sagan. Andre Greipel has got himself up towards the front. He is behind the French champion. There's the green jersey of Marcel Kittel. Sonny Colbrelli with one teammate for support. Cavendish not quite in amongst it. Kittel with a lot of work to do from back there. Alexander Kristoff just behind him as he now starts to move around the outside. A big lead out from FDJ. They're down to one man remaining to do the job for Arnaud Démare. Sabatini leads out the blue colours for Quick-Step. And Kittel is waiting. He said he was going to go full gas, but he's waiting patiently. Now the sprint starts in earnest, and Kittel starts to slowly emerge. Colbrelli is still at the front. The challenge is on from Greipel. Colbrelli holding on. No, he's not. It's Cavendish who clears on through. That was a big sprint for 7th position. Mark Cavendish collecting points. The confidence continues to increase.
That will be a good little confidence booster for Cav. Comes out the wheel of Colbrelli. Peter Sagan through the middle. Shoulders Andre Greipel out of the way. Grabs an extra point. Demar, big lead out from Francais de Jeu. Didn't get there. And now Sagan and Greipel having a bit of a chat. But Greipel, he's managing to smile about it. But saying, mate, that wasn't the friendliest thing you've ever done. Was it absolutely necessary?
And now the challenge in the peloton to get themselves reorganised. Here are some of the VIP helicopters that follow the race. They stop in a field, a little bit of champagne, they have a picnic. Now that, Robbie, is the way to go and watch the Tour de France.
Would be a great way to go and watch the Tour de France. But just looking back at that sprint, Marcel Kittel, a long way back, had a teammate doing the lead out on the front, while Marcel Kittel was at least 15 or 16 positions behind, but didn't really make a big effort to try and get himself in position, and just at the last bit just sort of ranged up around on the right, but it was too little too late. And Cav, he'll see that as a good hit out, thinking more about tomorrow than this afternoon. Adam Hansen setting the pace, and a few of the other riders just starting to look like they're foxing just a little bit, because this Category 3 climb worth a lot more points than Category 4s. So a win atop the Côte de Vilts. Oh, sorry, this is a Category 4 climb. It's the one after Category 3, excuse me. So just 1 point on offer here. But every point can count. And sometimes come back to a count back to see who's going to get that KOM jersey. Nathan Brown, he is 1 point to nil to all the rest of the riders here, and they're starting to follow his wheel as Adam Hansen just continues to tap out the rhythm, oblivious to what's going on behind. But Nate Brown wanted to get himself further back to try and spring a surprise. They all followed him across the road and back again. They know what he's up to.
Well, they're almost at the top. Adam Hansen, as you mentioned, he just wants to maintain the rhythm. And there's Hardy. He's got himself onto the wheel of Brown. Back out is the first to go. He tried at the intermediate sprint, and now Brown responds. Desperate to get into the wheel of the big Belgian farmer. Niels Pollitt, though, he's also there. And this is a pretty flat run over the final few hundred metres. Back out. Looks like he'll have the legs to hold on. No, he won't. Or will he? Yes, he does, with a vicious hook.
No,
Perhaps
he doesn't.
Pollitt gets there. He does. Back out tried everything with the left-hand hook, but Niels Pollitt was quick enough to collect the point. That's a big sprint. There's a problem. Back in the main peloton for the Direct Energy team. This is Thomas Buda, who was in the breakaway all day long yesterday. And Uray Sagan at the front, riding as slow as he thinks he can get away with. Again, they don't want to catch the breakaway.
And although we're seeing a minute 25 now, but really moving quite slowly on the climb, the peloton, and that sprint by our front group, our breakaway riders, I think they will have got them another 20 seconds, which is going to take some recovering from. Also trying to recover now is Buda, so he's fallen on the climb. It's often more of a, when it slows and stacks up and a touch of wheels, and it can be quite awkward when you fall at low speed. You can often hurt yourself more than falling at higher speed and just skidding across the ground.
All right, I'll test that theory. I'll give you a choice. You're going to crash going uphill at 20 or downhill at 60?
I'll choose the one at 20, because chances are, if I know it's coming, I'll be able to try and catch myself. But sometimes you fall with your full body weight, and you're more likely to break something at a lower speed just from the force of gravity. You will take off a lot of skin in a 60k an hour crash.
I'll choose C, neither. Out in front, though, that breakaway is starting to splinter. Niels Pollitt has continued over the top of the climb, and Nathan Brown from Cannondale Drapac has gone across to him.
The way they've been riding until now, the fact that they haven't had much more than 2 minutes to a peloton that hasn't been chasing them with all that much intensity, let's be honest about it, seems to me the break is not working very well together. Nobody's prepared to really make a big effort. They're all out there soft pedaling.
And here's the remnants of the breakaway. I think Adam Hansen will attack these three to try and ride across on his own.
Well, these two riders, they have taken the points at the first two climbs. Nate Brown on the first Category 4, Niels Pollitt at the last one, so also showing an interest. And they know now whoever is first across the line on this climb will put himself into the lead of the King of the Mountains competition and just reach out towards a polka dot jersey. Niels Pollitt showed a lot of speed in the intermediate sprint, jumping away from the rest. A lot of speed on the last KOM, which was a bit more of a sprint than a climb. Nate Brown, this will be to his advantage, a climb at average of 9%, which tells you there's definitely going to be parts of this climb that are well above 10%.
It will hurt. And there are the 4 Luxembourg riders who have won the Tour de France. From the left-hand side, the first winner from Luxembourg in 1909, Francois Fabier. Then in 1927 and 1928, Nicolas France, Charlie Gall in 1958, and Andy Schleck in 2010. Francois Fabier getting it all started for Luxembourg in 1909. As they go out across the dam. One of the big favourites for today's stage is amongst the Quick-Step team, but which one? The team is a bunch of favourites. Dan Martin is one of the names that has come up, as we're seeing Nathan Brown now racing towards the climb. Nathan Brown looking to see if he can pick up the 2 points this time, because Niels Pollitt collected the 1 point previously. But what does this do to the cohesion? Perhaps he's gone just a little bit too soon, has he?
Absolutely kills the cohesion, but Brown knows he cannot wait for Pollitt because he is the faster man. So tactically, it's a perfect thing to do with his eye on the King of the Mountains jersey. If he was thinking more about getting to the finish and trying to win the stage, he'd be sticking with him, riding together. That is obviously not what he's thinking. He wants to keep that polka dot jersey within the team, go from Taylor Phinney and onto his own shoulders.
This is the Chateau de Bouchard that they're just going through, and underneath the tunnel, it was constructed around about the year 1000. The courtyards were finished back in 1384.
Well, the gap is now opening up. Brown looking back over his shoulder, but Pollitt, he is going further and further back from Nathan Brown, the more pure climber, riding away from the time trial specialist. And at 1.92 m and 80 kilograms, well, you wouldn't back Niels Pollitt against a climber the size of Nate Brown.
Surely,
if you go
though,
and look at his stats, 182 and 65 kilo. That's a 15 kilogram difference, rather, to drag up this steep climb.
in fact, this is the old Chateau of Escheux that we're now getting a chance to look at, the origins of which date back to 927. During the 15th century, the whole village was surrounded by a big wall that went for some 450 metres. It was 1.5 metres wide and it had two big defensive towers. After the seizing of the Luxembourg fortress, the troops of the King Louis XVI then dismantled the stronghold by breaking down that castle. He can enjoy this moment, even though it's 92 kilometres to go, collect a bid from the Soignier, and be safe in the knowledge that he leads, for now at least, the King of the Mountains classification. And if everything goes according to plan, he'll be on the podium this afternoon to collect the jersey.
And what is also starting to get interesting is Nate Brown now has a lead of 3 minutes and 40 seconds over the chasing peloton. So since around that intermediate sprint, they've added more than 2 minutes to their lead. And particularly the attack by Pollitt and Brown, now the climb of Brown on this Cat 3. I mean, look at the distance he's put into Niels Pollitt on this climb. Pollitt's starting to look around and see if Adam Hansen is coming up towards him. I wouldn't be surprised if the camera swung around and could show us that chasing group of four coming back towards Niels Pollitt. And Brown, he looked more like he was prepared to wait over the top. He was just starting to almost recover while he's still on the climb.
He's taken the bidon on. He's having an eat with a gel, carbohydrate gel, to try and get some of the calories back into the system. He knows he's got no chance at all on his own. He's got a really slim chance with some company. And Nate Brown is definitely waiting.
So Nate Brown now on the radio, maybe asking a little bit of advice from his team director back in the car. And he'll be waiting for Niels Pollitt to come back across to him. I wonder how keen Pollitt will be to do all the work like he had been doing until that climb, where he then got ambushed by Nathan Brown, ridden out of the wheel.
He'll certainly understand the strategy of Nate Brown, and it was a good one. He had a plan, he's executed it. But it still might hurt. It's going to be really interesting to see how they do manage to work together. Still 91 kilometres left to race, and plenty of climbing still to come. Only 2 official climbs, one of them to the finish line in Longwy, another one a Category 4 climb. But as we've said throughout today's stage, there aren't a lot of flat stretches of road. Spare a thought for 135 with a swollen ankle. This is Tony Galopin. He's been a stage winner, a yellow jersey wearer. Today, he's just trying to be a survivor.
And this is the type of incident that would have made Thomas Boudat fall off on the last climb. The rider from Direct Energy who was in the breakaway yesterday. So when the bunch isn't really chasing, the pressure isn't on, you get these bottlenecks, could be a spectator standing a bit far out, and then they all come together almost to a complete stop. Speaking of, Nathan Brown is riding slower than they did in the neutral zone, waiting for Niels Pollitt to come back up to him. But the impression that Pollitt gave on the climb, he was waiting for Hansen and the rest to come back up to him. It's a bit of a Mexican standoff.
And the peloton is trying not to catch the breakaway. The back of the peloton now for the Sunweb team. This is Nikias Arndt, the winner of the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race this year, in what was a dramatic finish when Cameron Meyer almost held them off. Simon Gerrans was in second position. Cameron Meyer was caught right on the line and finished in third place.
And like I just said, Pollitt waits for the group, Brown waits for Pollitt. They're all back together again.
And their advantage is almost 4 minutes. One of the riders from the Cannondale Drapac team posted on social media today, Alex Howes. He's not here in the race, but clearly he's paying very close attention to how his teammates fare. And he made it pretty clear that the team has big ambitions for the King of the Mountains jersey, saying if Taylor Phinney starts in the polka dots and Pierre Rolland finishes with them, can we get a commemorative jersey for the rest of the team? I might be going for Taylor Phinney across to Nate Brown, and then perhaps Pierre Rolland. Once we do get into the high mountains, then we'll see the Frenchman in the breakaways. This is Dan McClay at the back of the group, the British sprinter who finished in 14th place yesterday. It was a pretty good start for Dan McClay. He had 5 top 10 finishes at the Tour de France on debut last year. And he is their protected rider on the stages for the fast men. Peloton
come across the 3 freshers, so taking advantage of those fresher legs compared to these other guys who've been out there since the very start of the stage. But can they get that gap? Buckard flicks the elbow. Brown doesn't come through. Pollitt's going to go from the back. Adam Hansen, is he watching? Nate Brown is. He goes with Pollitt. Can he cross the gap?
Good anticipation. If those 3 can go across and they ditch the other 3, if they get rid of Sika, Hardy and Buckard, maybe then they will have a cohesive group. But Calmejean, Perichon and De Gendt, they are not waiting. Pollitt charging across. The others, though, they're able to respond. Or are they?
Oh, not
Brown
all of
is
them.
starting to foil the pressure. He's slipping backwards. Brown is gone.
And
they
Pollitt
may
has
not-
cracked.
The gap was almost crossed. It was just a matter of 50 metres, but you're not there until you're there.
It was a full sprint effort from Niels Pollitt. Had Brown in the wheel, he blew up, and it's only normal after such a long day out in front, whether they're giving it everything all the way or not, trying to cross that gap at full sprint, and it was up and over a rise. And when guys like these have come out of the bunch, a little bit fresher, spent all day in the wheels, just turn the screws just enough. The others have cracked, and now they're away. And this is where you would expect them to really get down to a workmanlike rhythm and start to open this gap back up. Hopefully for them towards the 2-minute mark. Someone's still coming across.
Roman Hardy bridges across for Fortunato Oscaro. Joins his teammate Pierre-Luc Perichon. That gets a nod from the former green jersey winner. Impressed, Robbie?
Yeah, it's a good move. And What they need is one of the teammates to get across, to just bury themselves and try and extend that lead over the peloton. Adam Hansen, he had more or less a free ride coming across that gap. Be curious to see if he can do it. And look at the pace now going down on the front of the peloton. This is Rudiger Selig, Lawrence ten Dam, Jurek Sagan, all three in a row. Team Sky behind them, but they are riding now as hard as they can.
Look at the team car from Katusha trying to get back past the peloton to go to the breakaway. What's that like when you're in the peloton? You're hearing that horn.
You ignore it, because when it gets down to the pointy end of the race, you're not going to move aside for anyone or anything. Not the other riders, not a team car, until you get on a road that's wide enough to let it pass safely. For the team cars, good thing is there's a wider road coming up for them in about 500 metres time. He will get past. And now these four riders are moving clear of the rest. Motorbikes behind already. It looks like the rest of this group have been distanced, and there they are. That's a good 6 or 7 second gap. So this could be the moment that we really get the formation of a new group that gives themselves a chance of getting towards this finish line here in Longwy. The bunch, and he will be waiting for the return of Romain Bardet. This is Gusto, the Luxembourger.
The only Luxembourg rider in the race, and we're in Luxembourg. Here is the chase. There is Bardet sitting in second position. This is Axel Daumont at the back of the group, who's trying to stick with his team leader. And it looks like Cyril Goutier, who is at the front and setting the tempo. And now Daumont goes forward. Calm. There's no sign at this point of damage, but I'd like to see the hips of Romain Bardet. Either way, he's spending energy with the chase.
Well, he looks relatively comfortable too. Often when you've seen riders crash, you'll see torn clothing. No evidence of that from this angle. You also see them looking at their bike, looking at their bodies, checking injuries and things like that. He looks rather composed and pretty smooth and in control. So maybe he's just gone off the side of the road into the grass and maybe come off like that. No damage done, but a chase to be had. This far from the finish, 37k to go. Even though there's a fairly intense chase happening at the front, pretty confident he'll be back in the peloton pretty soon, but definitely that will be a scare for Romain Bardet and the AG2R team.
Another man who will be back in the peloton pretty soon is Adam Hansen. The tempo at the front, it's still Lawrence ten Dam, who was at the head of the peloton. But for Romain Bardet, it's not a matter of just making contact with the peloton. He's in amongst the convoy. He will hook up with the main field. He's then got to get to the front, because there will be gaps at the end of the stage today. Maybe it'll be 20 riders that go across the finish line all with the same time, but you can't afford to give away another few seconds to your rivals. Second gap doesn't tell the full story. That's 30 seconds from the front of the peloton to Bardet. The peloton itself is around about 8 or 9 seconds long, the way it's strung out in single file at this point. You can see at the rear of the peloton, the man who's been in the breakaway all day long. That looked like Roman Sicker starting to struggle. And here comes reinforcements. This is Ben Gastal, the tall, lanky Luxembourger. Adam Hansen now about to be caught. He does surrender. But an effective day out in front for Adam Hansen. Still in with a shot for the team, and that's the whole idea for Adam Hansen. Help the team win. And they've got Thomas de Gent at 1 minute and 43 seconds up the road.
Well, as we said yesterday with Johan Alfredo, you've got to roll the dice and have a go and see what the peloton lets you do. I don't think it was an ideal group for Adam Hansen. I'm sure he could have ridden a lot harder throughout the day, but if he had done that, it just would have taken advantage of him. But it's been a godsend having then Thomas de Gent jump up the road. Adam Hansen played his part to help increase the gap. This is a look at Bardet.
He looks good. The information that we got over race radio was victim de chute, Romain Bardet, le 11 for AG2R Le Mondial. A crash for number 11, Romain Bardet from AG2R Le Mondial. But there's no signs of skin off. And I'm hoping for Bardet's sake that you're right, that he just ran off the side of the road and into the soft stuff, hit the grass. He crashed yesterday, and that wasn't soft. That was onto the tarmac. They hit the deck pretty heavily as they headed into a roundabout. And one of the favourites for today's stage actually forecast that crash. Philippe Gilbert, 500 metres earlier on, telling Mark Renshaw they'll crash on the next roundabout. And they did. Renshaw, Cavendish and Co, they backed off and they avoided the carnage.
Romanardi, his day is done. He's done plenty of work in the first break. He then joined his teammate Perichon in the counter-attack and done a heap of work there. Chapeau Romanardi. And now it's Thomas de Gendt being distanced, which is a real surprise as Calmejean and Perichon drop him on the climb.
That is an eyebrow raiser. To see Thomas de Gendt going backwards, he looked to be the strongest. His record indicates that he is. But Lilian Calmejean, who we've spoken about for the last couple of days, is proving to be the strong rider out in front as de Gendt loses contact.
And a telltale sign there, Thomas de Gendt, he shifted out of that traditional big gear that he rides down to the small chainring, small gear. And Calmejean, he looks he's giving it absolutely everything. And Perichon, fairly comfortable. That's used loosely, that term. In the wheel, looking over the shoulder, realises now they've dropped Thomas de Gendt. Calmejean also sees it, and now pushing on just the two Frenchmen.
Well, you just saw for a moment then, it looked as if Lilian Calmejean was going to allow Perichon to do a turn of pace, but Perichon didn't have the legs to go forward, and now he has been dropped. You can see the shoulders are rising. He's losing contact. He has. Lilian Calmejean, we said he was strong, and now he's showing us.
Well, Calmejean striking out alone now, 21.5 kilometres to go. This is not even the second last climb of the day. This is just one of those hills that we mentioned along today's route. They just keep coming and keep coming at you. They're not rated, they're not classified, but they're certainly tough hills. Just ask de Gendt and just ask Perichon.
Lilian Calmejean, it's a lonely figure just outside the last 10 kilometres, 11.6 remaining. The tension in the peloton is increasing. We've seen one fall already. We heard about the crash of Romain Bardet. We saw no evidence of it. That was just based on race radio. And then the chase. But he looks to be all right. Yet we haven't seen the Frenchman at the head of the main field.
Well, the speed differential between that lone rider, Calmejean, 35k an hour, 40 kilometres an hour for the peloton, and they'll have him any second now as teams continue to push to the front. BMC, two riders on the left side, Richie Porte tucked away on the other side, but all trying to get together and get organised. It's what it's all about. But when every team is trying to get organised at the front, that's what causes it to be completely unorganised. And that's what we love as commentators and brings you an exciting race.
Hatching the plan is the easy part. Executing is the difficult part. They all know what they need to do. It's so difficult to do it. Textbooks are easy. Reality is difficult. Calmejean almost caught. Now a little bit of pushing and shoving back in the peloton.
John Degenkolb in second wheel in the white. Behind him, Alberto Contador. They both look to be following Koen de Kort, the Trek Segafredo teammate. This is Kirienka. He's had some sort of problem behind and is chasing back on.
He was involved in that fall with Bozic. So if anybody from Team Sky is going to crash, this is one of the guys that they can afford to have crash. The last one they want down, quite obviously, is Chris Froome. You don't want to see anybody hit the deck.
Well, Calmejean really not prepared to give up. He knows he's caught, but he's just making it last as long as possible. Maybe got his eye on that 10 kilometre to go banner. But right behind, he's got the whole bunch spread across the road. He's not interested in seeing that.
He's got the same theory as Thomas de Gendt, stubborn. They are literally on his back wheel, and he is not kicking the clutch in. There's no surviving from there.
He's making them close down every single centimetre of the lead that he had, as they do now go underneath the 10 kilometre to go banner. And there's the catch.
There he is on the right-hand side of the screen, Lilian Calmejean. As Greg Van Avermaet from BMC, you can see the sun glistening on the gold of BMC as Richie Porte also gets moved forward for BMC.
So Greg Van Avermaet looked like he's trying to tuck across to the Trek Segafredo riders, keep himself out of the wind. But at the moment, no, that's now someone else from BMC on the front. I was surprised to see Van Avermaet with his nose in the wind that early. He's now back behind Richie Porte. Richie Porte in second position. John Degenkolb, he's now tucked in there behind BMC. So teams all getting amongst each other, ruining each other's organisation as Kirienka now rejoins at the back of the peloton. Question is, can he make it forward and be of any more use to his team?
Does he need to?
I don't think so. It's getting so crowded at the front. There's only room for so many guys in that patch of road. It's going to be a lot safer if a few more don't get back to the front. And he doesn't look like he's in a hurry.
Former world time trial champion, third on the opening stage. This is Alessandro De Marchi at the front, followed by John Degenkolb. The next rider from BMC, that's Daniel Ovis. Alberto Contador, he was just on race radio. Here comes Lars Bak from Lotto Soudal, moving towards the front. The yellow
On here, you'll see some impressive numbers as they fight for position. Wide roads, but only room for one on the apex and the best line through the corners.
Mickey Shah was the rider at the front for BMC, getting through that corner quickly. Fortunately, it's a nice wide open road at this point, but they are drastically fast sweeping turns. Not an area for the faint-hearted. A real race to be at the front and try and stay safe. Thankfully, the weather is good.
Another 900 metres of this downhill. Look at this split. Michael Schauer, he has opened things up with that corner, and Greg Van Avermaet, I would assume, is tucked in his wheel, telling him to go, go, go. Or is that Richie Porte? It's Greg Van Avermaet. Richie Porte a little further back in the red and black colours. This descent goes for another 500 metres, bottoms out 4 kilometres from the line. They then have 2 kilometres of relatively flat roads until they hit the foot of the final climb to the finish.
Stybar, the former cyclocross world champion, sits in third position. Gilbert's not too far away. 60 kilometres per hour. And Steve Cummings doesn't care. He's at the back of the peloton. His opportunities to come later. 4 kilometres to race.
60 kilometres an hour on the entrance to that fast bend. So on that straight piece, they were definitely doing way above 80 kilometres an hour. This is the last chance to really improve position. Little step up, and there'll be another dip down. You see them coming from behind out of the slipstream. Sunweb on the right-hand side. Simon Geschke, he is bringing Michael Matthews and the other teammates of Sunweb forward. Dan Martin to the right of him. On the front, Border Hansgrohe, 1, 2, 3. Peter Sagan in the wheel. Van Avermaet getting amongst it. Peter Sagan in the middle. Behind him, Arnaud Démare. Slipped through the chicane. Now you really need to be placed at the front. There's hardly any time to move back up.
And the second of the riders that you saw in the green colours of Cannondale Drapac was Simon Clark. Also up there, it looked like it was the Dutchman for that same team, Dylan van Baarle. Marcus Burkhardt in second position, Van Avermaet in third spot, then Stybar. Reinhard Jens van Rensburg, the South African national champion. Simon Geschke is the next, the bearded one from Sunweb.
First quick step rider I can see is in about 15th position, left side of your picture. Under 3 kilometres to go, 2.5 in fact. These riders at the back, they'll play no further part in this stage finish and will be distance on the climb. The race is in front. They're only going under the 3 kilometre to go banner. This is 500 metres from the front of the race. Some of the Sky riders, their job done, like Luke Rowe. It's now Marcus Burkhardt who takes it up. Greg Van Avermaet in his wheel, Stybar behind him, and they're very close now, just 500 metres or so from the bottom of the climb.
The German national champion, Marcus Burkhardt, at the front, working for the world champion. Sagan is waiting patiently. He sits a little bit further back. Van Avermaet, he doesn't have team support, but all he needs is freedom. And today, the Olympic champion, he has the green lights. Reinhard Jens van Rensburg sitting in fourth position, the South African champion, doing brilliantly.
Straight run now onto the bottom of the climb, and the official climb hasn't started yet, another 200 metres, but they are definitely going uphill already. Marcus Burkhardt, he's going to stretch this out as long as he can. He's looking, where is Sagan? He sees Van Avermaet, he says, I'll leave you stranded on the front, thank you very much.
And Van Avermaet will not maintain this tempo.
Waiting for a teammate, and here is that teammate. He slots in. This is De Marchi. So Danilo Vis.
Danilo Vis, it is at the front. Richie Porte is up in a third position.
Well, what a difference to 12 months ago for Richie Porte on a stage very much like this one. He punctured, he was behind, he was chasing. Now he's at the front and looking in control. They're on the uphill, and Richie Porte will be very content with his position. Now it's about the stage win.
Edvald Bosenhagen, for Dimension Data off to the far left-hand side. The world champion with the rainbow jersey, Peter Sagan, squeezes his way through.
I think that was Michael Matthews that he squeezed out there. Left of Sagan, one of the Orica Green Edge riders, looks like Yates.
Contador on the left in the white colours of Trek Segafredo. Bardet is also at the front. There is Chris Froome on the left-hand side of the road.
And this is the steepest part of the climb, the first 600 metres at 9%. Once they go under the kilometre, it eases off. This is Marcel Kittel. It's too much for him. Wave goodbye, Marcel. Good day yesterday. You have another go tomorrow. Here we are at the front. Richie Porte in second position behind his teammate Michael Albacini on the right of picture in the navy blue of Orica Scott. One of the quick-step riders moving up, Philippe Gilbert.
It was Gilbert. He gets onto the wheel of Michael Albacini, who's got an enormous grimace. The second of the riders from Sunweb, that is Michael Matthews. Rafael Majka, he is there for Bora Hansgrohe. The yellow jersey trying to come forward. 1 kilometre remaining.
That's Michael Kwiatkowski trying to bring Geraint Thomas forward. Richie Porte in second position. Well, he will be so happy with the work of his team to put him where they have. A lot of other riders got a lot of work to do to move up. Richie Porte, he's looking very comfortable. Contador in his wheel. Rafael Majka, the pure climbers in doing. Richie Porte on the attack.
After the job of Nicholas Roche, it's now Richie Porte who goes. He looks across. Contador is with him. His teammate Van Avermaet is a little bit further back. Richie Porte, is he making a bid for stage honours and perhaps to get a little bit of time back on Chris Froome?
Well, if he doesn't take time, one thing is for certain, it's a big confidence boost. Richie Porte winding, Contador looking over the shoulder. He's losing the wheel. Richie Porte starts to ride away. It's up to Rafael Majka. He's got Peter Sagan in his wheel, trying to close the gap to Porte, and Porte just trying to strangle them from a long way out.
The gaps are starting to open up. It's Richie Porte out in front. Peter Sagan calmly moves up into his slipstream. He looks across, fully composed, the world champion. It's then Porte who gets a chance to sit behind Peter Sagan. Bosenhagen is there. Van Avermaet in the red colours. Here comes the Olympic champion with a little bit of gold and another
Sagan's
battle with Peter Sagan.
Sagan pulled his foot.
Sagan still going. Van Avermaet is trying to challenge, but Peter Sagan is recovered. He is the champion. Matthews is on his way. It's the world champion versus Michael Matthews, who is challenging. It's Sagan, only just, but just is enough because the champion reigns supreme.
Incredible finish, and if you needed any more drama, Peter Sagan, when he went to accelerate, has pulled his foot out of the pedal, reminiscent of when he won the World Championships 2 years ago, fended off Dan Martin, fended off a fast closing Michael Matthews, lunged for the line, and Sagan takes the victory. He was the big favourite, unbackable you might say, but he only just got there.
On laisse un peu d'espace, s'il vous plaît, messieurs.
The last kilometre was full of everything, and he looked so composed that the effort showed on the face of Peter Sagan.
When Richie Porte went and opened a gap, it was Rafael Majka who started to close it down, and then Peter Sagan himself, he took it upon himself to close it. But when he went, there it is, pulled his foot out the pedal. Composure. Van Avermaet started to come and never got past. Sagan got his foot back in, re-accelerated. Look at Matthews. Paused, followed Dan Martin on the right-hand side. Sagan starts to crack just a little, drifts back out to the middle. Matthews coming, sees him running out of road, and in the end, well, the throw for the line wasn't really necessary. Peter Sagan, he's had so many second places, he wanted to make sure. Dan Martin, we named him as one of the favourites of Quick-Step. The other's not there. Demar in the background in the top 7. But Peter Sagan, two-time world champion, getting ahead of myself, 5-time green jersey winner. With an effort like that, it's no wonder he's a favourite to take number 6 in a row. What a win. Matthews, fantastic effort for second, and Van Avermaet. And the 3 big favourites put Dan Martin there, 4 big favourites in the first 4.
An outstanding performance by Peter Sagan. What was impressive beyond the power was the composure. When the foot came out, it all got back into place so quickly because he stayed cool. There's no panic. You don't do things more quickly when you panic. In fact, you slow down. That was amazing.
There's one word that gets used a lot when talking about Peter Sagan, and that is cool. And Mr. Cool is number 1 today. The Slovakian from Bora Hansgrohe, Peter Sagan, winner of the stage ahead of Michael Matthews in second. Dan Martin from Quick-Step Floors in third. Greg Van Avermaet fourth. Alberto Bettiol in 5th place. Arnaud Démare a bit further back.
Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas inside the top 10. Some good signs from Richie Porte. He is the winner of the day, though.